Burning flames soared into the sky, and helpless wailing spread throughout the small village. The villagers rushed to flee, but the terrifying evil spirit was extremely fast. He rushed over almost in the blink of an eye. The eyes of the villagers can only pray helplessly. As a result, what ushered in was ferocious fangs. Accompanied by the splash of warm blood, the once fresh life ended like this. A village buried deep in the mountains that was once extremely lively, just like that, completely disappeared from this world in a short period of time. Su Mu came to this place according to the address, and what she saw was the situation in front of her. All dead, looking at the mess in front of him, with no life left, and the devoured white bones, Su Mu stood there, unable to bear the silence. Wow! A cry sounded, and Su Mu raised her head abruptly. Go to a dilapidated house. Houses have long since collapsed. The sound of crying came from here. Choke. A pitch-cold light flickered, and a gap was cut out of the collapsed house, revealing a dark basement. On a wooden table in the basement, an infant girl was staring wide-eyed. Su Mu stepped forward and gently hugged the baby girl. The golden eyes looked at the girl, who was not aware of everything in front of her. Slightly silent. Little life grows in such an environment. There is another orphan in this world. With the baby in her arms, Su Mu left this small village. Oh evil spirits of this world, he couldn't help muttering. A coldness flashed across his golden eyes. Although they are both ghosts, looking at the dead village in front of them, an inexplicable anger rose from their hearts. Holding the infant girl in her arms, she walked all the way. He needs to find Kochu Kanao as soon as possible. According to the news, Kochu Chanai should be nearby. Roar. The evil ghost crouched on all fours, jumped up like a wild beast, and attacked the human in front of him. The girl turned her body slightly to avoid the attack of the evil spirit, and at the same time, the peach-colored blade in her hand slashed across. The head of the evil spirit fell off in an instant. The energy of the sun contained in Nichiren blades invaded, and within a short time, the evil spirits turned into wisps of black smoke and dissipated. Although beheading an evil ghost, the girl is still very vigilant, not only because there are more than 10 weak women behind her, but also because there is more than one evil spirit. Raising his head, his purple eyes flashed with determination. Another evil spirit rushed up. Breathe the breath surged. The girl's figure danced gracefully like Kochu, and the Nichiren blades in her hand were also suddenly drawn out at this moment. Breath of flowers hyphenation .4 shapes. Red flower dress. The girl raised her sword, and made an arc-shaped double slash from top to bottom. Crack. Accompanied by the sound of a broken bone, the figure of the evil ghost that rushed over stopped instantly. Boom. The head rolled down and turned into a little black smoke rising. The girl stared at this scene with her mouth pursed. Ghosts, who live alone, have a very serious sense of territory. But now, so many evil spirits gathered together and attacked her. Can only say there is an extremely powerful evil spirit that drives these evil spirits. Combined with recent discoveries, young human girls continue to join the so-called eternal bliss cult, but there is no more news. At this moment, she is already very close to the truth. That is the one who drives these evil spirits is the second of 12 Kazuki, the ghost of ice, the leader of the bliss cult, Doma. After all, according to the ghost killing team's introduction to the ghost, the other party likes to eat young women the most. Papa Papa. There was a burst of crisp applause, and a young man with a golden iron fan on which a lotus pattern could be vaguely seen came out. The young man clapped his hands and exclaimed, "What a heroic and gentle woman." The young man has colorful eyes, and there is always a harmless smile on the corner of his mouth, like a harmless creature. It's just that the breath on the young man's body is a bit cold. The second winding, ice demon, Doma. The girl's purple eyes stared at the other party coldly, and she couldn't help clenching the hilt of the sword in her hand. Style, Kochu Kanao. Doma also called out the name of the girl in front of her. You dare to come here alone, you are such a brave girl. Kochu Kanao looked at the sky. The sun had just set, and it would be a long, long time before Li Tianming. I can feel that there is a big gap between myself and the opponent's strength. But he looked at the ordinary humans behind him who couldn't help shaking because of fear. From the day I joined the ghost killing squad. Didn't she just realize this? I don't feel any regrets. It's just that the only regret is that I didn't see my sister marrying a good husband. With a character like my sister, if she doesn't find a good husband, she will suffer in the future. Also, that different ghost. There were slight ripples in my heart, but immediately, these ripples were expelled from my mind. Now, with her, Kochu Kanae, there is only fighting. Roar. Another evil spirit rushed over. Kochu Kanae's purple eyes narrowed slightly, and his figure was also moving at this moment, his jet black hair swaying with the wind, especially the Nichiren blades in Kanae's hands. As a style, his own strength has been recognized. Perhaps, he can't deal with the winding ghost in 12 Kazuki, but for ordinary ghosts, his strength is indeed crushing. A ghost who charged up died under the girl's Nichiren blades. Unknowingly, the girl's blade has been stained with bright red blood, and there are fewer and fewer ghosts around Doma. Until the last ghost also died under the sword of Kochu Kanae. Panting slightly, after a fight, Kanae's delicate face turned slightly pale, and her hair, which had been tied with Kochou's hairpins, became unknowingly messy. However, there is still determination in the girl's purple jewel-like eyes. Now, there are no ordinary ghosts to consume my physical strength, and I still have spare energy to fight with you. The girl's upright and delicate body was covered with a slender figure under the standard uniform of the Ghost Slayer squad. Doma shook her head, and looked at the slender and tall girl with a slight sneer. Long black hair, purple eyes wearing a Kochu haori, and an emerald green Kochu beret on the long hair. Don't you feel that your breathing is not right? Doma still had a carefree smile on his lips. Kochu Kanae was slightly taken aback, and then suddenly realized that it was difficult for him to breathe. Unconsciously grasping the Nichiren blades, the purple eyes looked at the ever-changing cold environment around, and the ice crystal powder that had been scattered nearby. Just now, when I was fighting those ordinary ghosts, did I already get hit by the opponent's blood ghost spell? The already pale face became even paler. Feeling his own breathing, Kochu Kanae's face turned pale, and now, he can almost feel that his breathing has become more and more difficult. Especially when the crystals containing ice-cold powder entered his lungs, they began to damage his lungs. Moreover, where these ice crystals passed, even his own blood felt like it was about to freeze. Surrounding the eyes, unknowingly, the sky is surrounded by ice crystals. Obviously, as long as he continues to breathe, these ice crystal dust cannot be avoided. The more you fight, the worse your situation will be. She was already at a disadvantage, but now, seeing Doma's story again, her ending seems to be doomed. But Kochu Kanae still stood up, with a gentle smile on the corner of his mouth, and there was a bit of pity in the smile. These ghosts are really pitiful. Whether it is becoming a person or becoming a ghost, it has never been recognized as an existence. Your blood should be about to be frozen by ice crystals now. It's painful, isn't it? Why? Why don't you hurry up and expel the ice crystals in your body? The more violent your movements, the more breath you will have, and the more ice crystals you will breathe. Doma has a carefree smile on her face, mixed with infinite falsehood. For Doma, since birth, the joy, sorrow, pain and anger that people in this world should feel, he has never felt. Even if you become a ghost, it's the same. Can't feel these feelings, but try to pretend to have feelings. Kochu Kanae stood upright, holding the Nichiren blades tightly. Tapping the ground with the toes, the whole person is like a dancing Kochu, attacking Doma. Doma's figure retreated quietly, smiling while avoiding the attack. The invasion of methamphetamine. Now, every attack and every breath you take will make the invasion of methamphetamine in your body deeper and deeper. If you continue like this, your body will not be able to support it, and you will die. With false reminders, Kochu Kanae pursed her lips, and there was no trace of hesitation on her delicate face. From the moment he joined the ghost-killing squad, he had already made such an awareness. Awareness of being killed by a ghost. Therefore, Doma's so-called death reminder never shakes Kochu Kanae's heart. The Nichiren blades in his hand swung over, as if the air was blooming with petals at this moment. Doma easily dodged Kochu Kanae's sword. At the same time, he waved the golden iron fan lightly in his hand, and the edge of the fan blade, which was as sharp as a blade, slashed towards Kochu Kanae's fair neck. The girl's figure is still in the air, and she is facing the fan blade that is being drawn. If it is an ordinary swordsman, the figure is in the air, and there is nowhere to rely on it. Facing this situation, I am afraid that there will be no life. But, what the hell is Kochu Kanae's sex? Ah! His slender and flexible figure began to twist, and then his whole body tensed up suddenly. In an instant, his hands swayed like a top, driving his body to turn rapidly like a top. And Nichiren Blades, who was held by Kanae in the palm of her hand, was also waving in an instant, almost within a short distance, blocking the cold fan blades across the neck. Choke, the blades, as cold as blades, touched the blades of Nichiren Blades, bursting out fierce sparks. Although the blade-like fan blade was blocked, the huge power contained in the lock of the fan blade still rushed in, directly smashing Kanao, who was in the air, into the air. Seeing that it was about to fall to the ground, the girl let out a coquettish reprimand at this moment. The Nichiren blades in her hand waved out, touching the ground. The flexible blade curved slightly, and rebounded instantly. With the force of the rebound, Kochu Kanao was beautiful. It turned over and fell to the ground quite staggeringly. In a fierce battle, life and death are everywhere, but the girl's reaction ability and fighting talent are really strong, and she can always find that sliver of life in the extreme danger. But after a fierce battle, Kanao breathed more and more ice crystals in the air, and with the inhalation of ice crystals, because of the breathing method, the hot blood in the body began to freeze continuously. Every time I breathe, I feel a sharp pain like a needle prick all over my body. His face was pale, but Kanao still gritted her teeth and stared at Doma coldly. You are much stronger than I thought. It also makes me want to swallow you. He licked his lips. For Doma, the favorite thing to eat is immature girls. Be swallowed by me obediently. Only by being swallowed by me can people be redeemed and gain eternal life like me. Doma opened her arms, bewitching in her words like a savior. As her words were spoken, it seemed that there was a kind of magical power urging Kanao to put down her weapon and be obediently swallowed by it. However, these words cannot play any role in bewitching Kochu Kanao, who has already made up his mind. Kanae's eyes became more and more determined, and she still had a smile on her face, but the smile contained pity for ghosts. In this world, human beings born in this world should feel the joy, sorrow, and you can't understand anger and trembling emotion, can you? Doma's colorful eyes narrowed unconsciously. You are very smart. You lie to cover up, in order not to expose your unwavering heart. You pretend to be happy. You pretend to be sad. For you, whether it is a happy thing or a painful and sad mood, you can't feel it in your heart. Are you there? Kochu Kanao gently caressed the Nichiren blades in his hand. In your heart, you were empty and empty. Why did you come to this world? Almost, I saw through the essence of Doma at once. From birth, there is no human emotion, and naturally I can't feel human emotion, but I have been trying hard to experience it. So, try to pretend to be all kinds of emotions. But the inner world is empty, nothing at all. Since this is the case, there is no need to continue playing with you. Then I will devour you. All the emotional color on Doma's face dissipated, and became incomparably indifferent, neither joy nor pain, just like a machine. Kochu Kanao pursed her lips and breathed. Although the more she breathes, the more ice powder she inhales in the air, and the more painful it is, but at this moment, if she stops full concentration breathing, it is impossible for her to last long in Doma's hands in her state. Holds the Nichiren blades. Flower's breath 6 shapes. Whirlpool peach. Nichiren blades waved, and the petals followed, circling between the blades, and slashed towards Doma. Doma watched the scene silently. Weak human beings can only desperately exchange for a short moment of spreading their wings and soaring. It's really sad. It's over. Doma watched indifferently, and raised the fan in his hand. Blood ghost art. Weeping snow in the dry garden. Doma waved the golden fan blade, and with the wave of the fan blade, set off the frost. In an instant, 9 chains of frost pierced out. The temperature of the air dropped to the freezing point in an instant, and almost in an instant, the flower breath 6 shapes. Whirlpool peach was destroyed and attacked with a terrifying offensive. The fan blade, as sharp as a blade, attacked Kochu Kanao. It seemed that he wanted to kill the woman in front of him completely. The girl's eyes are firm. Facing the powerful attack, Kochu Kanao didn't have any intention of retreating, and tightly clenched the hilt of his sword. She's going to use her strongest attack. Flower's breath final shape, the vermilion eyes on the other side. The secret meaning of the breath of flowers. Dynamic vision is enhanced to the limit by pressurizing the eyeball, and the movement of surrounding objects in the field of vision will appear sluggish. When using it, due to the overload operation, the eyeball will bleed and stain the sclera, so there will be a risk of blindness. Breathe. Concentrate on breathing. Originally, for a pillar, like Kanao, it has long been instinctive to concentrate on breathing, but because of Doma's blood ghost technique, now, almost every breath will bring unimaginable pain. So now she needs to hold her mind to use even the full concentration of breathing. The sword was held tightly. It is necessary to use the flower breath mystery. Just ready to use. A fiery red sword glow suddenly cut across. Clang. Accompanied by intense sparks, the golden fan in Doma's hand was directly chopped off. A figure holding a child suddenly appeared in front of Kanao. Under the bamboo hat, A pair of golden eyes glowed with a cold light, and the cloak with Kochu once embroidered by Kochu Kanae rolled in the wind. Long black hair fluttering in the wind. Everything is so familiar. Ghost Slayer's new pillar, Ghost Pillar, Sumyu. The figure stood in front of Kochu Kanae, looking at Kochu Kanae in distress. Sumyu's eyes flashed with anger, although he cared, but he didn't say anything about it. Just looking at Kanae, said in a low voice, "You are much more embarrassed than I imagined." Kochu Kanae squatted her head, and a little woman who seemed to be injured outside stood behind Sumyu. Although, like Doma, Sumyu is also a ghost, but this ghost Sumyu brings him an unparalleled sense of security. Kanae flicked her hair. Her hair was already messed up in the previous battle, and it was covered with dust and mud. It seems that the image is not good. The opposite is 12 Kazuki. The second of the winding, the ghost of ice. Doma, very strong, please be careful. Kochu Kanae whispered a reminder. I know. Sumyu nodded. The most important thing for you now is to take care of yourself. At the same time, he handed over the baby girl in his arms. Please help me to take care of him. I may not be able to get away to take care of her after we fight. Kochu Kanae nodded, took the child from Suemyu's hand, and at the same time, stepped back gracefully like Kochu. The battle below is not his own. This action, was really too careless. With my own strength, I am not the opponent of the second Doma at all. If Sumyu hadn't arrived in time, not only she would die, but those who were protected by her would also die. After Sumyu gave the child to Kochu Kanae, she turned her head. Eyes fell on Doma. 12 Kazuki, winding E. Doma. When Suemyu's golden eyes fell on Doma's body, Doma's colorful eyes looked up and down Suemyu's body in doubt. From Suemyu's body, he felt an extremely powerful threat, which was almost as strong as Kokoshibu, the first string, and Akaza, the third string. But what is certain is that there is no such person in 12 Kazuki. A ghost. Choose to protect humans. Doma looked at Sumyu suspiciously, her colorful eyes filled with puzzlement. Shouldn't you be with us to deal with the ghost-killing squad? Sumyu shook her head. I'm here to end you. Doma was slightly taken aback, then smiled. That's interesting. Even Akaza, that arrogant kid, wouldn't dare to say that. Sumyu didn't care about the other party's ridicule. Instead, slowly sheathed the Nichiren blades. Don't use the Nichiren blades? Doma murmured slightly. Accompanied by a murmur, his figure suddenly moved, and in an instant appeared beside the fan that had just been chopped off. He picked up the fan and waved it violently, and the ice crystals rained down profusely. At the same moment, 2 more handballs appeared in Suemyu's hand. Ghost of Handball, Susumaru's handball manipulation. The handball hit like a shell. At the same moment, eyes seemed to flash across Suemyu's palm, and a dark red invisible arrow shot out. The ghost of the arrow pattern, the red and clean arrow that enters the feathers. Not only that. At this moment, Suemyu's whole body seemed to be covered with a metallic light. Devil's Claw, Ghost Eye, Ghost Feet, Ghost Hair. After killing so many ghosts, the abilities of those ghosts suddenly appeared on Suemyu's body. Not only that, at this moment, Suemyu's mind moved. 2 more people exactly like Sumyu emerged from the ground. Splitting ability. Splitting into 2 ghosts with the same strength as the main body. Damn it. Watching the handball hit like a cannonball. A red and clean arrow like an arrow. Overwhelming spider silk. These aren't Susumaru, Yahaba and the last 5, tired blood ghosts? Why, this kid has it all. The ice crystals from all over the sky hit Suemyu's dark golden body, making a cracking sound, but they couldn't cause any damage to Sumyu. At this moment, his handball attack had already attacked in an instant. This moment. The upper string number 2 in this 12 Kazuki can only escape in embarrassment under so many abilities of his own. Perhaps, he could escape at first, but soon, he encountered attacks one after another. If it weren't for the ghost's immortal body and super healing, at this moment, Doma might have died already and couldn't die again. Hateful. Doma touched his cheek, his face was flushed with blood, it was just that the spider silk had just slid across his cheek, directly scratching the flesh on his face. Do you think that you can beat me by relying on blood ghost skills? The colorful eyes looked at Sumyu coldly. These are just side dishes. If I can't even handle the side dishes, I don't need to draw my sword. Although the successive blood ghosts made Doma into a mess, it is not well known. To be able to become 12 Kazuki, there are a few simple tricks. Sure enough, these blood ghosts can't kill Shangxian. So Sumyu also withdrew her ability. His hand rested on the hilt of the sword at his waist. A slight trembling came through the scabbard. Then, it's over. Under the black hat, the boy raised his head, and the sword hidden in the sheath flew up. A dragon's voice under Doma's disbelieving gaze, a sword passed by. Cut off his head. How? How is it possible? However, Su Emu's sword had already cut off his head. The solar energy contained in the Nichiren blades attacked in an instant, and now, Doma, who has not yet broken through the limit of ghosts, cannot do it at all. Even if his head is chopped off by Nichiren blades, he can still survive. As the black smoke dissipated, this 12 Kazuki's second ice demon died under Su Emu's sword. The bodies of 12 Kazuki, Winding E, Ice Demon, and Doma were gradually invaded by the energy of the Nichiren blade's sun, and gradually turned to ashes like burning paper. As Kochu Kanae said, since the heart is empty and empty, then why come to this world? Or go back to hell sooner? That's where Doma ends up. Turning around, Kochu Kanae was looking at him with shocked eyes. It's hard to imagine that in such a short period of time, Su Emu's progress has reached this level. To know his strength the first time I saw him. Now, even 12 Kazuki's number 2, Doma, can be easily killed. An extremely frightening speed of progress. It is conceivable that if it continues, even Kibutsuji Muzan may. As soon as this idea appeared, Kochu Kanae threw it out of his mind. No one in the ghost-killing team would like to see a ghost that is stronger than imagined. Because, once it is a disaster for the world, no one can control it anymore. As for Kochu Kanae, she doesn't want to think about that. Only I simply think that Su Mu is a different ghost. And after beheading 12 Kazuki, Winding number 2, and Ice Demon Doma, familiar mechanical voices also sounded in Su Emu's ears. Ding. Congratulations to the host, kill an evil spirit, and get a reward. Ice crystal powder. Ice crystal powder. It can make your own blood highly poisonous, and spread it by freezing your own blood and making it into ice crystal powder. After the ice crystals are sucked into the opponent's lungs, it can make it difficult for them to breathe, and then cause their alveoli to die. Hearing the obtained ability, Su Mu nodded slightly. Before, it was this ability that made Kochu Kanae fall in love. Otherwise, even if Kochu Kanae loses to Doma, he can persist for a longer time. It's just that compared with killing 12 Kazuki, the second Doma, the reward of the ability obtained is actually not comparable. Shaking his head, Su Mu didn't think about it, but walked in front of Kochu Kanae. Although out of the battle in time, Kochu Kanae is still in poor health because he inhaled too much ice crystal powder. However, to be able to become a pillar, the body's functions are already strong enough, and nothing will happen in a short time. However, timely treatment is still necessary, otherwise there may be any sequelae. I'm fine, you don't have to worry about me. Kochu Kanae's face was quite pale. Su Mu ignored her, but directly took out a firework-like thing from her bosom, and then threw it towards the sky. This is similar to modern communication settings, and it is the communication device used by members of the Ghost Killing Team to contact the later stage of Hidden. As the Ghost Slayer squad who has fought against Kibutsuji Muzan for thousands of years, it has a special post-processing team. Most of these follow-up processing teams are composed of members without swordsmanship ability, responsible for the finishing work after the Ghost Killing Team fights with ghosts. It didn't take long to wait, and soon, someone rushed over. There are about 10 people in total. Take care of things here, and find a carriage. Su Mu gave direct instructions to the hermit, who came. The hermit nodded respectfully, but when he looked at the mess all over the floor, his eyes couldn't help shouting admiration. This time the ghost, I am afraid it will be very difficult to deal with. From the devastated ground around it, it can be seen how fierce the battle was before. The swaddled baby was also handed over to Wyan. For this kind of thing, Wyan has a proper way to deal with it. The only hope is that this girl can live a good life in the future and not be too deeply affected by this matter. Regarding the news of beheading 12 Kazuki, the second Doma, he also passed it out through the letter Crow. It is estimated that it will not be long before the master, Yubayashiki Kagaya, will see it, and I am afraid that he will be excited for a long time. However, Kibutsuji Muzan should have felt something about the death of ghosts like 12 Kazuki and Shangxian number 2. With the character of Kibutsuji Muzan, I am afraid that he will hide in the dark again for an unknown period of time. That cautious ghost, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to find his trace. Carrying Kochu Kanae onto the carriage and putting it away, I could feel a blush suddenly appearing on Kanae's pale face as my palm was wrapped around Kanae's waist. In the carriage, apart from Su Mu and Hana Wei, There is also a special, Wyan who is following along. This, Wyan is a doctor and is responsible for taking care of them all the way. Mew, it's not necessary at all, I'll just stay nearby and heal on the spot. Kochu Kanae whispered. Mew looked up at the other party. I don't worry about handing you over to them for treatment. Although there are specialized doctors in Wyan, compared with Kochu Shinobu and Tamayo who are far away in Kochu dance, their medical skills are definitely worse by more than 2 points. It is safer to bring back Kochu dance therapy. Take a good rest, don't think about anything, and control the toxins in your body with peace of mind, he urged. Okay. Kochu Kanae nodded, closed his eyes, and controlled the kusu in his body with peace of mind. The carriage was driving at a very fast speed, and the road would occasionally bump. Mew hesitated for a moment, and sat next to Kochu Kanae. Kochu Kanae, who was closing his eyes to calmly control the breath and toxins in his body, opened his eyes involuntarily. Leaning by my side, the road is bumpy, Mew said to Kochu Kanae. Okay. Kochu Kanae hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded a little shyly, moving his body closer to Mew, turning his head to the side, and resting slowly on Mew's arm. This section of the journey is getting more and more difficult, tossing and turning, looking at Kanae who is controlling her breathing while trying to prevent her from falling. Mew stretches out her hand domineeringly, holding Kanae's shoulders, letting her lie on her shoulders on the legs. Kanae struggled slightly, but Mew's big hand had already pressed on her shoulder. Knowing that struggling was useless, Kanae blushed slightly with embarrassment. Simply, don't care about anything, just close your eyes with peace of mind, use Mew's thigh as a pillow, and breathe with peace of mind. All the way in silence. On the carriage, the following, Wyan tactfully went to a corner of the carriage, leaving space for the two of them. Even if the carriage was bumpy, Mew still firmly controlled her body, using her body as a buffer, so that Kanae would not suffer any bumps. The carriage is still running normally. Kanae was like this, closing her eyes, breathing quietly, concentrating on the toxins in her body as a fighting fish. The girl was wearing a tight-fitting Ghost Slayer squad uniform, and she quietly closed her eyes. The curves are soft, slender, and pure, very gentle woman. Upon receiving the news of her sister's injury, Kochu Shinobu's face turned pale with fright. When her sister Kochu Kanae arrived at Kochou's house, she anxiously began to check on her sister. I'm fine, just a little hurt, Kochu Kanae whispered. What's all right? Sister, your blood is now soaked with toxins. If you don't treat it properly, you will have serious problems. Kochu Shinobu put his hands on his hips and reprimanded his sister. How can such an injury be called nothing? As far as Kochu Shinobu is concerned, she is already a relative of her elder sister, if something really happens to her elder sister. For Kochu Shinobu, it was nothing like the sky falling. And also, Kochu Shinobu suddenly raised his head and looked at Mew. Mew was stunned for a moment. Obviously he didn't expect Kochu Shinobu to draw his anger on him all of a sudden. He didn't do anything. If he didn't appear in time, Kochu Kanae might have died. You know that your sister is in danger. Why don't you hurry up to protect her, and let her suffer such a serious injury? Kochu Shinobu beat Mew's chest with his small fist. The small fist is not heavy, it looks soft. Although it is said so, it is obvious that Kochu Shinobu is just venting the grievance in his heart. Although being treated as a punching bag made Mew a little depressed, but seeing the look of forbearance, at the moment, he subconsciously regarded him as a family member, which made him a little happy again. In a way, the husband is also a family member, isn't he? Only in front of family members would one be so unreasonable, unscrupulous, and unreasonable. Jaein, don't mess around. It was Mew who arrived in time to save me. He is my sister's savior. How could Jaein blame him? The gentle Kochu Kanae looked at the mischievous younger sister, and also got a little angry. The action this time was caused by her carelessness. When she got the news from 12 Kazuki and Doma, she should have reported the situation and waited for the rescuers to come. I couldn't bear it. If Mew hadn't appeared in time, not only the person who should be saved would not have been saved, but even himself might have been ruined. Humph. Kochu Shinobu gave Mew a heavy hum with his small nose. Instead of punching Mew's body, he ran in front of his sister and began to treat her injury, while muttering incessantly, "Sister, those are all what he should do." What to do? Kochu Kanae frowned tightly, her own sister, increasingly confused. Mew has nothing to do with what other people should do. Sister. Why do you say that? Kochu Kanae blamed herself a little in her heart. Over the years, she had really neglected her younger sister, How could she say such cold words? Looking at the sister who seemed really angry, Kochu Shinobu couldn't help sticking out his tongue. It's okay, sister. From now on, I'll leave it to him to do any heavy or rough work. After finishing speaking, Kochu Shinobu turned his head and said fiercely to Sumiyu, who was standing there. Is that so? Well, that's right. Sumiyu nodded. At the same time, the golden eyes glared fiercely at Kochu Shinobu's slender body. Now the fierce makes Enin proud. It's for Enin face. Wait until one night, fine time. Kochu Shinobu is already hers anyway, isn't she? Oh, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. My sister, let go. Let go. My sister knows I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. Just when Kochu Shinobu was still proud, Kanae's little hand had directly grabbed Kochu Shinobu's little ear. Immediately, it was as if the ren and du secondary veins of this smug little female cat were pinched. Quickly apologized to Miu, Kochu Kanae frowned and reprimanded his sister. Kanae, you don't need to apologize, Sumiyu said hastily. Miu, you don't have to say good things for your sister. Forbearance is fine if you play around. Now, you can't even tell the basics of right from wrong. The son you Kanae has saved your life, and your sister treats Miu like this. It really makes Miu see a joke. It's all a family. What kind of favors are they talking about? Sumiyu shook her head. Family. Kochu Kanae was stunned. When did she and Sumiyu become a family? Could it be as if thinking of something, Kochu Kanae couldn't help but blushed. For Kochu Kanae, she can feel the scorching eyes of Miu, usually looking at her. Sometimes, Miu would even say some blush words to her. After a long time of contact, I thought that the character of Miu was like this. So he didn't take Sumiu's words seriously. But every time Sumiyu looked at her, some jokes, or occasionally said some inexplicable words. Although they were just simple words, those words were inexplicably sweet and greasy. Could it be? The other party really likes me? His face was flushed. But Kocho Shinobu next to him took the opportunity to get rid of his sister, and looked at Sumiyu with blushing purple eyes. She naturally knew what Miu meant. Since the night before Miu went to save her sister, she was bullied. It's this bad guy. Sister, don't think so much, I'll take care of the injuries in my body for my sister. Kochu Shinobu hastily started to treat her sister's injury. Okay. Kochu Kanae nodded, and when he was about to educate his sister, he quickly. An exception was found. The younger sister's temperament seems to have changed. She is the most concerned about and familiar with Kochu Kanae, who can hardly hide anything about her younger sister from her elder sister. For some changes in her sister, she can naturally feel it clearly. Although the change in temperament is very vague, it is impossible to describe but it does exist. In the past, my younger sister's temperament was serious, but in front of me, she would become like a child again, but overall, she was still a lively young girl. But now obviously different. This kind of temperament is only possessed by those women who have been married before. I hadn't noticed it just now, but this time I noticed it, which immediately made Kochu Chana feel troubled. Don't let your own sister be coaxed by someone, and then give herself out just like that. Sister, in the future, if you have any troublesome things, you will leave them to Miu. If you leave it to him, you don't have to worry about him. He is just a cow, and he will work hard without complaint. Kochu Shinobu glanced sideways at Sumiyu, his face flushed slightly. Looking at the younger sister's attitude towards Sumiyu at the moment, I think of the family that Sumiyu just mentioned. Everything seemed to be clear at once. Sister and Miu have already. Although Miu is a ghost who likes to say things that make girls blush, but after getting in touch these days, he also understands that the other party is a very reliable and gentle ghost. And the younger sister has a detached personality. I am afraid that only a man like Miu will not be bullied. She should have been happy for her sister, but for some reason, she felt a sense of loss. It's like something that should belong to you in your heart, but it's taken away by others. There is a feeling of emptiness. Kochu Shinobu took his sister to the room for treatment. Although Kochu Kanae repeatedly stated that his illness was fine, but for Kochu Shinobu, who regarded his sister as bigger than the sky, even a small injury could be a big deal. How could you listen to your sister? His eyes followed the leaving back of the Kochu sisters, while Sumiu's eyes fell on his own sword. Unknowingly, when I came to this world, from Zoran to now, I have been deeply concerned about her. Obviously he is selfish, only fighting for his own survival. But unknowingly, the deeper the concern, the more difficult it is to let go of some things. Unknowingly, there is a kind of protection in my heart, what protection cares about. There is also an extra responsibility. Responsibility means burden. He is not a person of this world. He should be free from this world, but he has an extra burden, which means that there are more constant connections. It seems that it is not worthwhile. Things. In fact, it could have been ignored. Sometimes, knowing clearly that one's identity is a ghost will make the ghost killing team suspicious, and clearly joining the ghost killing team is a ghost, as really thankless. But joined anyway. I feel that everyone trusts me, so I don't know why. I don't want to see the eyes of the other party who is disappointed in me. Even if there will be no disappointed eyes, he also didn't want to disappoint these girls' expectations of him. Tsuyuri Kanao, Makomo, Kochu Shinobu, Kochu Kanae. As his position in their hearts became deeper and deeper, why not his fetters to them? I think I probably can't get rid of it. Su-Mu looked at the sky and lightly pressed the hilt of his sword. He could feel the trust of Tsuyuri Kanao, Makomo, Kochu Shinobu, and Kochu Kanae in his heart. If there is something that endangers their existence, even at the risk of their lives. In the past, when I was watching anime, I didn't quite understand the existence of bond. It felt like it was a very vague existence. But now, it is becoming clearer. It's really stupid stuff, isn't it? Backquote. He raised his head, but tightly held the hilt of his sword with his hand. It's obvious that you can have no weaknesses, but because of this, you have more weaknesses. It's really stupid, isn't it? But for some reason, I was probably the kind of stupid person. There is no way to change it. Don't want to change for that either. Breathe, concentrate on breathing. With his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, his mind was ethereal. But at this moment, the connection between himself and the sword is getting closer. Although it is just an ordinary Nichiren blades, at this moment, it seems to be full of spirituality, just like the battle with 12 Kazuki. Sword art? It doesn't feel like it. The art of controlling the sword is dominated by the will of the person, and the sword moves according to the will of the owner. Killing people thousands of miles away is invisible. But it is the sword that dominates. Once you really want so, the sword will then be unsheathed. When the sword comes out, blood must be drunk. If you don't drink, your sword will be ruined. It's an uncontrollable feeling. After the sword is released, all results are no longer under my control. This feeling of being out of control made him a little unhappy. As if sensing the master's emotions, the Nichiren blades around his waist also seemed to make soft chirping sounds. Obviously just ordinary Nichiren blades, but like a talking child. Constantly competing for favor with the master. At the same time also aggrieved to explain. The so-called sword must drink blood. It means that the moment the sword is drawn, the sword will respond to the owner's intention. In fact, it also follows the master's will. Shaking his head, he no longer thought about these things, but his mind was empty, and he began to practice swords by himself. Hundreds of years ago, Ji Guoyuan could make 1,500 effective slashes in 1 second. Well, the same, he can do it too. Ji Guoyuan Yi is a person who only appeared in thousands of years. He is a person comparable to the reincarnation of God and Buddha. Ji Guoyuan deserves to be the ceiling of Demon Slayer's world combat power, and it seems to be an existence that cannot be caught up. But Su-Mu exhaled slowly. He is not an ordinary existence, is he? Ji Guoyuan is an existence comparable to the reincarnation of gods and Buddhas, but he is also a ghost-like existence, isn't he? When the thoughts are together, the thoughts are immediately accessible. Ji Guoyuan Yi is not a height that he cannot reach. It is not impossible for him to slash 1,500 effective slashes in 1 second. Then, Ragiri starts with 1,500 effective slashes per second. Although it takes a long time to practice to do this is the way to go, isn't it? Come to the empty courtyard. Su-Mu concentrated her mind and started her journey of drawing the sword. How to make your sword faster, faster, faster. There is no doubt that it is most suitable to practice drawing a sword and chopping. A sword in an instant, only fight for a haircut. Backquote, choke. The blade was pulled out from the scabbard, cut through the air, and cut forward. The speed is so fast that it is almost impossible for the naked eye to catch it. And what is fast is not only the speed, but also his own strength and energy are all integrated into this sword in that moment of slashing, not just an ethereal sword. It is a sword that contains extremely powerful lethality. With a sword cut, the air seemed to be cut through at this moment. Boom. The result was that the hard rocky ground was cut into deep ravines by his sword. Such a powerful sword, even if the aftermath spread, would break the surrounding trees. Hold your breath and continue to practice. Faster, faster, faster. Trying to break through one's own limit, and then break through one's own limit, to reach a new height. Ghosts have endless history. It can let him squander his physical strength wantonly. If it is a human, I am afraid that after one strike, it will be exhausted due to physical strength. As for ghosts, there is no need to worry about these. Although he would be out of breath after a sword strike, but soon, thanks to the ghost's almost infinite physical strength, he would recover in an instant. Continue to practice killing. Although benefiting from the characteristics of ghosts, he can recover faster, but also because of the characteristics of ghosts, it makes him more tired. With uninterrupted practice 24 hours a day, progress is naturally obvious. Sunrise and sunset he kept practicing his sword, and within a second, he could make more and more effective cuts. As far as he is concerned, it is only a matter of time before he catches up with and surpasses Ji Guoyuan's 1,500 effective slashes per second. He believes that it will not be too far to catch up with Shangji Guoyuan for a while. Su Mu beheaded 12 Kazuki. The news of the second winding soon reached Yubayashiki Kagaya, the Lord. The moment he received the letter, Yubayashiki Kagaya couldn't believe it. Perhaps, he wouldn't be too surprised to kill the lower string in 12 Kazuki. But winding, it is really unbelievable. The Demon Slayer squad has been established for so many years, and the number of times it has killed 12 Kazuki is almost very small. Even if it was killed that time in history, for the ghost killing team, it still paid a heavy price. But now the news I got was that there was no price paid, the only price was that, style, Kochu Kanae suffered some injuries. Incredible, but after a brief disbelief, the rest is extremely excited. It's an almost historic moment for the Ghost Slayers, which means that now things are finally changing between the Ghost Slayers and Ghost Dancer Muzan. Everything is completely coming towards him. Cough cough cough. Holding the envelope, I couldn't help coughing excitedly. Father. Yubayashiki Kiryu looked at his father Yubayashiki Kagaya worriedly, because his father was bleeding when he coughed. This means that the father's condition is serious again. Yubayashiki Kagaya waved to his son, indicating that he was fine. Taking steps, he came to the window with difficulty, pushed the window open, and let the warm sunlight shine on his body. Even if the eyes are no longer visible, but at this moment, Yubayashiki Kagaya's white eyes seem to be rippling the whole world. In our generation, Muzan will definitely be defeated. Kibutsuji Muzan is a stain on our clan. I finally see hope. Constantly murmuring, his fists were clenched unconsciously. Crack. In a dark basement, there was the sound of bones shattering from clenched fists. A man in black Western-style clothing and a white cap clenched his fists. The flesh and blood on the nails were deeply pierced into the flesh and blood, and strands of dark red blood continued to flow. The man was unaware of this. Damn it. When 12 Kazuki, winding number 2, Doma died, he already felt it. Heart, filled with thick anger, but fear. At this moment, he seemed to recall the battle hundreds of years ago. That person is called Ji Guoyuan Yi. Recalling his questioning to himself. What do you take human life for? Then, he swung down the sun-like sword that was still echoing in the shadow of his heart. I must find the blue bana flower as soon as possible, only in this way, I will become a perfect creature. And before. Just lurk for now. For a perfect creature like him, with an almost infinite life, the short twists and turns are nothing to him. It's just. I still feel very annoyed. Be patient for now. Wind Pillar. Shinazugawa Sanemi was already shocked when he was tired of getting Su Mu to kill the next string so quickly. Also, very annoying. Because, he had a bet with Su Mu before, and he was very unwilling and annoyed when he thought that he would have to kneel down and kowtow to Su Mu the next time they met. He didn't think of a solution for a while, but when he thought about it, he tried his best to find a 12 Kazuki for a while, and tried to kill it. Then, the next time we meet, he will use this as a reason to find some for himself. Face. But now, with the news that Su Mu beheaded 12 Kazuki. First string E. Doma, Shinazugawa Sanemi felt completely hopeless. As a pillar, and also as a pillar, who once fought against 12 Kazuki, Wind Column, Shinazugawa Sanemi naturally knows the horror of 12 Kazuki, especially the top string in 12 Kazuki, which is completely unmatched by the bottom string. When Su Mu killed 12 Kazuki. When he was tired, he was still a little unconvinced, but after beheading 12 Kazuki. I just hope that we meet later next time, otherwise. The thought of kneeling and kowtowing to a ghost 3 times made him feel a little hot. That's really embarrassing. But although he was unwilling this time, he was not unconvinced. As for repenting for him, it is something that does not exist, since it is promised, it is something that must be done. In a courtyard, a young man was looking helplessly at his drunken father, who was drinking wine. The young man had blonde hair. At this moment, standing under the sun, he was shining with a fiery light, as dazzling as the sun. This young man is none other than Yanzu, Rengoku Kyojuru, and the father in front of him, who is drinking wine, is Rengoku Kyojuru's father, former Yanzu, Rengoku Mojuro. Suddenly, as if feeling something, Rengoku Kyojuru stretched out his hand, and a raven landed on his arm. When Rengoku Kyojuru read the letter, his dark eyebrows raised unconsciously. That brat beheaded 12 Kazuki. Winding too. Doma, it's really amazing. Father, father. Rengoku Kyojuru shouted to his father excitedly. Rengoku Mojuro looked at his son coldly. Don't tell me about the Demon Slayer squad again, it's really boring to me, and we, father and son, will never be able to achieve great things. In the past, even if Rengoku Kyojuru refused to accept what his father said, he didn't know how to refute it, but now. Ghost Pillar has already beheaded 12 Kazuki. 12 Kazuki. Doma. As soon as the news reached the ears of former Yenju, Rengoku Mojuro, this person who hadn't taken it seriously just now suddenly stood up. Although because of his wife's affairs, he was disheartened and no longer asked about the ghost killing squad, but for existences like 12 Kazuki, the second of the first string, it is impossible for him, the former Flame Pillar, not to know. Kibutsuji Muzan is not invincible. Rengoku Kyojuru said excitedly. Today, since I can kill 12 Kazuki, the second on the string. Doma, next time, I can kill the first on the string, and next time, it will be Kibutsuji. Up. Rengoku Kyojuru's body is as confident as his golden fiery red hair, burning like fire. What Ghost Pillar can do, we can do the same. At this moment, Rengoku Kyojuru clenched his fists. Today's weather is pretty good. Tokito Muichiru, who is a Shaju, just looked at the sky boredly after receiving the news that Ghost Pillar killed the second Doma. Lord Ghost Pillar, you are really strong. You are such a wonderful boy. Love Pillar. Kanroji Mitsuri got the news, his eyes lit up, his cheeks blushed unknowingly, his big light green eyes unconsciously looked at Nezuko who was practicing breathing in the distance. It's no wonder that my apprentice respects Master Ghost Pillar so much. Master Ghost Pillar, you are really outstanding. No matter what the Pillar or other people who got the news thought, at this moment Sumiu was pressing the hilt of his sword with his right hand, staring at the old man wearing a Tengu mask in front of him with scorching eyes. Want to play a game? He looked at each other. Water column, Yorokodaki Sakanji did not know when he appeared in front of Sumiu. This man wearing a Tengu mask and blue clothes is Mikomo's master. The last time he fought was when he left Shawu Mountain, and that time he fought against him. However, that time his strength hadn't reached the level where the opponent could really use his sword. The opponent also only used a tree branch to fight him. But even if it was a branch, that battle left a big impression on him. It can be said that Water Column, Yorokodaki Sakanji is the most powerful pillar. After Rock Column, Hamejima Kiyome are not weaker than Rock Column. After all, the two have never fought against each other. At this moment, Yorokodaki Sakanji looked at him sharply with eyes like eagle eyes. The silver moon hangs high, and his slender figure exudes an extremely powerful aura at this moment. Ho ho. Do you want to fight? Sumiu looked at the other party with some scorching eyes. He still had a fresh memory of the last battle. Under the Tengu mask, Yorokodaki Sakonji's gaze looks up and down Sumiu. Your progress is simply beyond imagination. Just now, he caught a glimpse of Suemu's practice. Even he was shocked by the speed of the sword. Want to have a competition? Sumiu asked persistently. Since you are going to fight, the old man will accompany you. Yorokodaki Sakanji smiled, came to a tree, used his hand as a sword, and cut off a branch. The old man stood there quietly, thin, straight body. Although he was only holding a branch, there was an extremely powerful aura exuding from his body. Seeing all this, Sumiu just shook his head. The me now, you take the branch, I can't deal with it anymore. Sumiu shook his head. Take the sword, it is good. Yorokodaki Sakanji was not sloppy, he threw away the branch and put his hands on his waist. Choke. The cold sword edge was unsheathed, and with the moonlight shining, it shone with a water-cooled sneer. It's been a long time since the old man has almost half retired in Shawu Mountain. The old palm caressed the blade. Yorokodaki Sakonji's eyes were full of nostalgia. Today, I will let this old man experience how advanced the person who is admired by my apprentice Makomo has reached. The voice did not fall. His old figure disappeared in an instant. There is no need to say hello when fighting against masters of their level. In the next second, the figure of Yorokodaki Sakanji appeared in front of Sumyu. Water-breathing one shape, water surface slash. Quickly swung the knife to launch a straight slash from the plane. Although it was only one blow, it was amazingly powerful. For ordinary people, it is almost difficult to react. If his own strength is still at the level of the last time he played against Yorokodaki Sakanji, it will be absolutely difficult for him to react at this moment. But now, not anymore. Sumyu raised his sword and wiped it, and met the incoming sword. Clang. The metal-like, strong agitating sound echoed throughout the Kochu house like a bell in the morning and a drum in the evening. In an instant, from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, there are lingering crisp sounds. Hearing the sound, many people couldn't help rushing over. Among them, the fastest is Makomo. When Makomo rushed over, he saw two figures constantly fighting. One is my master Yorokodaki Sakanji, and the other is Mujong. Feeling a little confused, she didn't know who to cheer for. She could feel that the two of them were just discussing each other. But the scene of the battle still gave her a feeling of fright, and if she was not careful, she would be facing life and death. The two figures meet in the air. Water breath two types, water wheel. Yorokodaki Sakonji's body somersaulted for a circle, and then issued a circular slash. From above to below, the momentum is like a broken bamboo. Breath of the sun -1 shape. Round dance. Sumyu slashed forward without any hesitation in an arc entwined with flames. The two swords touched again in the air. When swords touch, they all send out deafening shields. When the sword touches, both of them are separated. Su-emu's face was still calm, but Yorokodaki Sakanji was already panting slightly. He is old after all. Do you want to take a break? Sumyu frowned and looked at each other. Isn't it time for the old man to rest? Kid, don't underestimate the old man. Water-breathing Nagi of picking up one. In an instant, the old man Yorokodaki Sakanji seemed to enter a state of tranquility and stillness. Any sword that Sumyu cut over seemed to be ineffective for him at this moment. It's such a powerful shape. Sumyu watched, eyes widening. And at this moment Yorokodaki Sakanji opened his eyes suddenly, and the Tengu mask he was wearing exploded instantly. Shua. Water breath 9 shapes, water spray. In an instant, it was the sound of a sword cutting through the air. The speed of his sword is only in the blink of an eye. The attack came in an instant. Choke. Sumyu raised his sword and wiped it, but blocked it abruptly. It can be said that the strongest technique was blocked. And at this moment Sumyu suddenly raised her eyes. The sword came out like a dragon, and in an instant, the wind and thunder rose. Another sword slashed out, like a meteor falling, but it landed on Yorokodaki Sakonji's breath of water xiyi Nagi, in an instant, breaking Yorokodaki Sakonji's state of tranquility and still water in an instant. Lin Taki's eyes widened, but his reaction was not slow, and he retreated instantly. But next moment, the world seemed to be filled with light at once. A sword as fast as the ultimate. In an instant, 493 swords were drunk. The sword fell to the top of Yorokodaki Sakonji's head, and the sword glanced at the vital parts of Yorokodaki Sakonji's body. Yorokodaki Sakonji raised his sword and resisted. But it can only block 323. The remaining swords are unstoppable. Hanging hands, falling, sighing slightly. I lost. The sword in Yorokodaki Sakonji's hand had already been blown away, and there was a trace of desolation on his face. He is old. Ahem. Unconsciously spit out a mouthful of bright red blood. Obviously suffered some injuries. After all, even though you kept your hand just now, but involving their level, damage can be caused by a tiny bit. Obviously, Sumyu hasn't been able to do whatever he wants. Inevitably hurt Yorokodaki Sakonji. Master, are you okay? Makomo, who was watching the battle, was also taken aback. He hurried over and helped the master up. Looking at his apprentice. There is a touch of tenderness in Yorokodaki Sakonji's eyes, in his heart, like Sabito, like Makomo, they are all treated like sons and daughters. Makomo, this is your choice. In the future, if you are bullied by him, I can't help you. Looking at Makomo with a worried face, Yorokodaki Sakonji waved his hand to indicate that he was fine, and said with a smile. In a word, Makomo's delicate face couldn't help but flushed, and the small face couldn't help but look towards Sumyu. The little foot couldn't help stomping on the ground. Master, what are you talking about? Ha ha. Yorokodaki Sakanji couldn't help laughing, then looked at Sumiu. Is there any wine? Although Sumiu doesn't drink alcohol, she knows where to find alcohol. Senior, wait a moment. After Sumiu said something, his figure disappeared in an instant, and the next moment, when he reappeared, he already had a jug of wine in his hand. Taking the jug, Scale took a sip of his spirit recently. Then he handed over the jug. Sumiu hesitated for a moment, but still took a big gulp. For a person who rarely drinks alcohol, it was a bit spicy, but suddenly there was a surge of pride in his heart. Seeing all this, Yorokodaki Sakanji couldn't help laughing happily, but after laughing, his eyes suddenly became dignified and serious. Sumiu. Yorokodaki Sakanji spoke seriously. Sumiu looked up in surprise. If one day, I find out that you have dared to defeat my apprentice, even if I, Yorokodaki Sakanji, lose to you, I will do my best to uphold justice for my apprentice. Sumiu froze for a moment, and couldn't help looking at Mikomo. Mikomo's face was already red at this moment, and he was very shy in his heart. He didn't expect the master to say such words suddenly. This moved her heart very much. For her and Jingtu, who were orphans since childhood, they have already regarded Yorokodaki Sakanji as their father. Today, these words of Yorokodaki Sakanji are clearly a father who entrusts himself to Sumiu. There won't be a day like that. Sumiu nodded and said seriously. So, I am also relieved. Yorokodaki Sakanji nodded, took over the jug at the same time, took a big gulp, and broke the jug after drinking it all. Today, I had a great time, I drank your wine. The implication is that Mikomo will be handed over to him in the future, hoping that he will treat him well. Yorokodaki Sakanji discussed some issues with Sumiu again and left. With the departure of Yorokodaki Sakanji, there is only Mikomo who is a bit awkward. These audiences are still immersed in the dreamlike battle between the two just now, and they haven't recalled it for a long time. Sumiu walked up to Mikomo naturally. Mikomo. The thing that Ryodaki Senpai mentioned just now. Before Sumiu finished speaking, Mikomo's face was flushed red, her little head turned away shyly, and her white hands unconsciously grabbed her dress. Don't think that you are flattering, master, I just want to did you. He lowered his head subconsciously, looking at his toes. It can be seen that the girl's small and white ears are already full of red. Looking at Mikomo's state at the moment, Sumiu still doesn't know what Mikomo is thinking. Only because there are still many people on the field, so appear very shy, very embarrassing. It's normal for a girl to have a thin skin, let alone a shy girl like Mikomo. Anyway, what Senior Linlong meant was that he would leave Mikomo to me to take care of him with more peace of mind. Bah. Mikomo. Mikomo hasn't agreed yet. Mikomo blushed and muttered in her small mouth. It doesn't matter what Mikomo wants or anything. Sumiu stretched out his hand directly, and grabbed Mikomo's tender little hand. Anyway, in my heart, you are already mine. Whoever wants to rob Mikomo from me, first ask my sword whether I agree or not. He said domineeringly. The golden eyes were unconsciously glinting sharply. Now, whoever dares to rob Mikomo from him will cut him down with a sword. In front of so many people, being held by Su Mu's small hands, and being said such domineering words by Mu Zhong, Mikomo felt a little hot on the skin, and some wanted to break free, but he was a little bit reluctant. Moreover, Mikomo also has his own little thoughts. In front of so many people, such a state of intimacy is just right to declare one's sovereignty. But Mikomo knows that in this Kochu house, there is a pair of shameless little vixens who hook up with Mu Zhong every day. Yes, we are talking about the Kochu sisters. As for the Suyuri Kanao girl, Mikomo never cared about it. After all, Kanao didn't look too threatening. How can you be so overbearing? Mikomo muttered in a low voice of dissatisfaction. Deep down in his heart, he was full of joy, raised his head unconsciously, and blinked his eyes. HMPH, bullying people by force will not end well. Mikomo squinted his good-looking eyes and seemed to be talking about people, but in fact, it seemed more like a spoiled child. And, Mikomo with this appearance is really cute. It made him want to hold this lovely girl in his arms. He just wanted to hold this cute and explosive Mikomo in his arms, but when his eyes looked into the distance, he looked gloomy and looked like a woman with black hair all over his body, and his body froze involuntarily. Kochu Shinobu came over at some point. At this moment, Kochu Shinobu looked at Mikomo and Su Mu's intimate appearance. Almost all the anger and sourness in his heart overflowed from his beautiful eyes. At this moment, she clenched her fist tightly, wishing to use the special wisteria poison to poison the shameless little vixen next to Sumiu who likes to wear a fox mask to death. Sumiu raised the hand that wanted to hug Makomo and just froze in place. At this moment, Makomo didn't see Kochu Shinobu coming because his back was facing Kochu Shinobu. At this moment, he was shyly waiting for someone's hug. Kochu Shinobu stared at Suemiu's outstretched hand with a pair of beautiful eyes, and those eyes looking at Sumiu were full of warnings, as well as full of killing intent. But, in the end, Suemiu's hand still hugged Makomo naturally, and hugged him in his arms. Sumiu naturally knew that at this time, anything she did was wrong, and she had already offended Kochu Shinobu to the death. Therefore, when choosing to owe 10 yuan or 10,000 yuan, in essence, there is no difference, they are all owed money, just like at this moment, to make Kochu Shinobu angry, whether to be angry a little bit, or to be angry a lot, in essence, it is a foregone conclusion that Kochu Shinobu will be angry. It can no longer be changed. However, although she took care of Makomo, looking at Kochu Shinobu's murderous eyes made Suemiu's scalp tingle. Especially Kochu Shinobu's eyes that seemed to eat people made him afraid to look directly at him. Unlike Makomo's personality, Kochu Shinobu has a bad temper, and he is notoriously a black-bellied master. Gently patted Makomo's soft back, and whispered in Makomo's ear, "Makomo-chan, wait for a while." Makomo froze for a moment, raised his head unconsciously, and followed Suemiu's gaze. Soon, I saw that certain woman staring with dead fish eyes. The eyes are so big, is she really afraid to be Makomo? He straightened his chest and looked at him without hesitation. The gazes of the two young girls met in the air, full of shadows of swords and swords. The people who came to watch 4 weeks ago, even if they realized something later, they still felt that something was wrong, and they couldn't help but look at Sumiu with pity. Those who were envious of Sumiu before are now full of sympathy. Offended Miss Kochu Shinobu, do you still want to live? You deserve it, no matter who tells you to flirt with Makomo, even Kochu Shinobu, not a single beauty is spared, that's really overbearing. Generally, people who are too domineering will not end well. Letting go of Makomo, Sumiu strode towards Kochu Shinobu. But at this moment, every time she took a step, Sumiu felt as if she was wearing shackles under her feet. The shackles were very heavy as 1,000 caddies. Moving his feet, he walked towards Kochu Shinobu with difficulty. Since you are too greedy, you have to bear the consequences of greed. Isn't it the Shura field? A jod. He's not even afraid of Kibutsuji Muzan, he's afraid of mere little women. Although he would rather fight Kibutsuji Muzan than deal with the little woman. When I came to Kochu Shinobu, I looked at this lovely, beautiful, and eye-catching woman, but at this moment, she revealed an extremely powerful, full of sinister and evil spirits. Legs are a little soft. Ninja is here too. How is your sister's injury? Is there nothing wrong? He asked with some concern. He knew that Kochu Shinobu cared about her sister most. Listening to Suemiu's inquiry, Kochu Shinobu's mood at the moment is also very complicated, wishing to bite the big bastard to death with his teeth, but, if he really wants to bite him to death, he is reluctant. However, thinking of committing to this person only 2 days ago, I also made plans to become sisters with Kanao. But I didn't expect this big bastard to be so dissatisfied. And flirting with other girls. For a moment, my heart was full of grievances. Looking at this big bastard with purple eyes, he didn't say anything, but those purple eyes were full of grievances. Sumiu still wanted to wait for Kochu Shinobu to reply, because she was ready to be beaten up by Fatty. But looking at a small face full of grievances, there is a strong Kochu Shinobu. It feels like things are a little bit out of control, a little bit out of control. As a novice, he still wants to be a veteran driver, which is a bit too immature. Kochu Shinobu stared at him with eyes full of grievance and anger, and did not speak. Just be silent. Everything is stiff at the moment. The environment is also silent at this moment. If it continues like this, the situation will get worse and worse under the background of the bad atmosphere. Can't wait any longer. If we wait any longer, maybe Kochu Shinobu will really explode. Knowing this, although he felt a huge headache, he still stretched out his hand, and gently hugged Kochu Shinobu in his arms. Hiss. Those who saw this scene couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. You read that right, he just hugged Makomo just now, and already made Kochu Shinobu angry. Now, wouldn't he want to make Makomo angry by hugging Kochu Shinobu again? It's hard enough to offend one. Both were offended at once. I'm afraid I'm going to be hammered to death. However, I have to say that although this embrace, it relieved Kochu Shinobu's outburst emotions at once, and made Kochu Shinobu's full of grievances and anger firmly vented in this embrace. Emotions are relieved. Feeling this, Su-mu also breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same moment, he felt a chill running down his spine. No need to think, Makomo should have narrowed her beautiful eyes at this moment. I can already imagine Makomo biting his white and tender teeth, and his fierce eyes. After hugging for a while, Su-mu corrected Kochu Shinobu's figure, and stared at Kochu Shinobu's purple eyes with golden eyes. Your sister, is your health better? For Kochu Shinobu, the most important thing is his sister. This time, against Doma and Kochu Kanae, although there is no serious injury, they also suffered serious injuries. With me here, I'm sure it'll be fine, not to mention Ms. Tamayo helping me. There was still resentment in Kochu Shinobu's tone, obviously, the sourness was still there. That's good, that's good. Su-mu smiled, turned her head involuntarily, and saw Makomo's faintly narrowed eyes, her eyelids twitched. Turning his head hastily, he saw Kochu Shinobu's fierce purple eyes again. Tangled in between uncomfortable want to cry. What should I do waiting online, a little urgent. Of course, these are just some small complaints in my heart. Although I am flustered in my heart, I am quite calm on the surface. After all, he was determined to be a veteran driver, how could he be hit by a little difficulty in front of him? Although he was committed to being an old driver, it was obvious that his driving skills were too bad, and the situation in front of him was out of his control. The mountain road full of twists and turns is no longer something he, a novice driver, can control. But there is one thing that Su-mu understands very well. That is, if he continues to appear here, the eyes of the two people will definitely focus on him alone. Even focus on him. Involuntarily took a step back to the side. Okay, pretentiously, he continued to practice swords. Leave the battlefield to Makomo and Kochu Shinobu. You tear each other up. I cringe. Sure enough, after he pretended to start practicing swords, Makomo and Kochu Shinobu's gazes also met in the air without Su-mu's cover. The corner of Makomo's mouth is outlined with a fox mask on her head. Just now, she has a master, water pillar, Yorokodaki Sakanji, to support her. And what does this little fox have, relying on her sister? Kochu Shinobu's purple eyes are also looking at Makomo coldly. This little fox, relying on his own beauty, started to hook up with his own man. Could it be that she didn't know that I have already committed it a few days ago? Eyes interlaced in the air, intense sparks seemed to flicker in the air. Makomo versus Kochu Shinobu, swords and swords between little women. The prelude to the battle began. Even if the people around are far apart, they can faintly feel the chilly atmosphere in the air. Both are the daughters of heaven. One is the disciple of Yorokodaki Sakanji, the water pillar, and the other is the sister of Kochu Kanae, the flower pillar. In terms of appearance, each has its own merits. In terms of age, there is no difference. Really hard to tell. But now, two such excellent girls are about to fight because of one person. Do not, it was because a ghost was about to fight. I am envious of Su-mu being liked by two women at the same time, and I am also secretly sorry. It's so pitiful. I think of myself and others. If they get mixed up, I'm afraid I'm at a loss. That ghost still has the mood to practice swords there. His mentality is really admirable. Of course, what they don't know is. Now, Su-mu was in a panic. If the two really tore each other apart, who should he help? No matter who you help, it is not a good choice. But seeing that the two are really torn apart, it must not be left alone. Worry. The gazes of Makomo and Kochu Shinobu kept clashing in the air. Although they were speechless, they were already accompanied by swords and swords. Some people have already begun to expect the two women to tear each other apart. Better fight. Such a cute girl, if you tear it up, it must look good. Their eyes had long ignored Su-mu, who was pretending to be practicing sword. Kochu Shinobu was already furious in his heart. It was unforgivable for this little vixen to seduce another man. If she hadn't been concerned about her own image, she would have tore up this little bitch thousands of times now. The same is true for Makomo. It was the first time she was tearing each other up with another woman because of a man. Moreover, I can feel that the surrounding eyes are all focused on her, especially the little bitch opposite. Those vixen-like purple eyes have already begun to provoke her. Are you going to let yourself go first? Some eager to try. But, immediately, Makomo felt the gazes of the people around him, and could clearly feel the expectations of the people around him, waiting to see a joke. If he went first, wouldn't it be the wish of this little bitch? What's more, Mu Zhong has made a promise to her just now, and in the future, she has to take care of herself. Hee. This little bitch relies on his own beauty, but he will definitely not get Miu Yang's promise. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but feel a little complacent. Obviously, Makomo believes that he should have the upper hand. If he really stepped forward to tear up this little bitch now, wouldn't it be that Miu Zhang was underestimated? Substituting myself into Miu Zhang, I definitely don't like the messy Makomo. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but look away. She couldn't be fooled by this little bitch. As Makomo withdrew her gaze, Kochu Shinobu naturally withdrew her gaze. She had already committed herself to Sumiu a few days ago, and she also thought that she had the upper hand. She didn't want to tear each other up in public with this little vixen, otherwise, her image would not be affected by this. The little fox was devastated. The people watching the battle thought they could see an unparalleled battle between beautiful girls, but wait. That's it. What a disappointment. Unconsciously, everyone couldn't help but cast their eyes on Sumiu. The swordsmanship between Makomo and Kochu Shinobu has almost solidified. What is the attitude of the instigator? Forehead, somewhat disappointed. Still practicing swords there. Some people couldn't help sighing. It's no wonder Lord Ghost Zhu is so powerful in swordsmanship. Up to now, I can still practice swords with peace of mind. He is really a role model for my generation. This has probably reached. There is no woman in my heart, and I draw my sword to become a natural god, right? But think about it, it's not right. Just now I saw Lord Ghost Pillar cuddling with Makomo and Kochu Shinobu. While Sumiu was practicing the sword there, her mind was not on the sword at all, but on the two women. It feels that the war between the two people seems to be maintained in an ingenious balance after a short-term contact like swords and swords. This made him slightly relieved. Although the current situation is still stiff, in the current situation, it is not easy for him to take action. After all, the current situation is extremely sensitive, and a little carelessness may cause the situation to explode. The best choice is to continue shrinking, be a shrinking turtle, and try not to pay attention to the two of them. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Just when the situation was at a stalemate, a burst of crisp footsteps came, breaking the situation. And the moment he saw the visitor appear, Makomo's beautiful eyes suddenly shrank to be as sharp as wheat awns. Wearing long black hair reaching to the waist, pink and purple eyes, under the tight standard uniform of the Demon Slayer squad, wrapping an almost perfect body, and wearing colorful butterfly pattern feathers fluttering in the wind. Those delicate faces shaved and smiled, making people seem to be immersed in each other's tenderness for a moment. Kochu Shinobu's older sister, Kochu Kanao, Kochu Shinobu's helper came. This caused an invisible pressure to rise in Makomo's heart. Elder sister, seeing her sister, Kochu Shinobu was overjoyed, ran to her sister and threw herself into her arms. At the same time, the little head turned around and looked at Makomo proudly, as if saying, "I have helpers, how about you?" Makomo unconsciously looked away, biting her cherry lips with white and tender teeth unconsciously. The current situation is not good for her. Unconsciously, he set his eyes on Sumiu. This bastard, he promised to take good care of himself. Now, Makomo is being bullied, but he shrinks back. I'm really so angry. Kanao is here, are you feeling better? Sumiu also put down the sword in his hand at the right time, and asked with concern. My sister and Ms. Tamayo's medical skills are very good, and they are already much better. Kanao said softly, her voice was like the warm sun in spring, and she was gentle everywhere, but her eyes were a little complicated when she looked at Sumiu. That's good, that's good. I'm in good health, so I'm relieved. It just happens that it's getting late, so I should go back to rest. Sumiu pointed to the moonlight at night. After all, without waiting for the consent of others, he left on his own. Seeing that Sumiu was about to leave, Kochu Shinobu and Makomo frowned, almost subconsciously wanting to follow. But when they saw each other's movements, they gave a proud hum. At the same time, if they chased after each other now, wouldn't they be underestimated by the other party? Looking at his younger sister and the woman with the fox mask on her head, the clever Kochu Kanao could tell at a glance, and secretly gritted her teeth, this Sumiu. It's really hateful to be merciful everywhere. Back in the room, Sumiu also wiped the sweat off her forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, he was mixed between Makomo and Kochu Shinobu, which really made him dare not take a breath, not to mention, Kochu Kanao came later. This time, he didn't dare to stay there any longer, he used an excuse and ran away in despair. Leaning his head on the bed subconsciously, he began to think about how to deal with the matter between Makomo and Kochu Shinobu. It's just that after thinking about it for a long time, he didn't have much idea, which made him feel good. I feel that dealing with women is more difficult than dealing with kibutsuji muzen. Headache. Suddenly, there was a gentle touch in the head, a warm feeling. Very comfortable. The feeling of being massaged. The feeling of headache has been slightly relieved. Squinting his eyes unconsciously, he began to enjoy it, and made a comfortable, humming sound unconsciously. After an unknown amount of time, Su-Mu opened her eyes slightly, looked at Tsuyuri Kanao who was massaging her head with her little hands, and asked curiously, "Kanao, when did you learn this massage technique?" "These days, I followed Sister Ren to read some medical books and figured it out by myself," Kanao said in a low voice, with a little shortness of breath. At this time, Su-Mu noticed that Kanao's fair forehead had a thin layer of sweat at some point. Seeing this, Su-Mu felt distressed and blamed herself. Just now, she was only enjoying Kanao's massage, but she didn't notice Kanao's physical strength. After all, right now Kanao is still too young and has limited physical strength. Tired? Stretching out his hand, he gently wiped off the sweat on Kanahira's forehead. Not tired. Kanao bit his lip. Kanao is very happy to feel that Mu-chan is comfortable. The girl showed a very happy smile. Sincerely, not falsely. "It's really hard work for you." Su-Mu couldn't help feeling distressed, and gently hugged Kanao in her arms, feeling the docile kitten-like girl in her arms, and felt the softness deep in her heart as if she had touched it. Kanao closed his eyes unconsciously, and his eyes were full of happiness. For Tsuyuri Kanao, her fiancé is her heaven. After a while, Su-Mu let go of Kanao from her embrace. Looking at Kanao with a red face, she felt that her own Tsuyuri Kanao was very cute. When he grows up, he will surely be juicy and juicy. Thinking of this, I became more and more looking forward to it. Unconsciously, there was an inexplicable ripple in her heart. Feeling a malicious thought in her heart, Su-Mu stood up hurriedly, walked to the windowsill, and opened the window. The cold wind blowing on the face at night made Su-Mu's fiery heart slowly calm down. The current Kanao is still too small. Tsuyuri Kanao's purple eyes kept looking at her fiancé, looking at Mu-chan who seemed to be hiding some emotions. Her little hands unconsciously clenched the knee-length black pleated skirt, as if thinking about something. Her chest was also slightly undulating dust. Tsuyuri Kanao held the corner of her clothes tightly with her small hands, looked at her fiancé standing on the windowsill, and bit her lip eagerly. Mu-chan, Kanao, can I sleep here tonight? It is like the sound of mosquito wings flapping their wings. If it weren't for Su-Mu's hearing being clear enough, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to hear. Look back. Looking at the slightly shy Tsuyuri Kanao, I always feel that something is wrong with Kanao today. Mu-chan, tonight. Kanao sleeps here, is it okay? Kanao was speaking amiably. His voice was like a mosquito flapping its wings. If Su-Mu's ears were not clear enough, he might not be able to hear it. If in the past Su-Mu didn't care too much, when he took Kanao away from Kanao's parents, at that time, he almost hugged Kanao every day. Sometimes, I also hold it when I sleep. At that time, it was never in anxiety at all. But that time was not the same as it is now after all. At that time, Kanao's world was closed, and he had no opinion on everything outside. But now, Tsuyuri Kanao is different. Ever since Kanao had his own consciousness last time when he attacked the mountain, everything has been different. Kanao already has his own consciousness and his own judgment. Moreover, with the growth of time, the once malnourished, shriveled and thin girl has slowly turned into a slim and tall girl. Mind, of course, is different. Already, I can no longer cuddle like a child. Although, he is Kanao's fiancé, but, after all, he is not married yet. At this moment, the environment was a little quiet, and Su-Mu was stunned for a moment, a little hesitant. Kanao's small hands unconsciously clenched the knee-length black pleated skirt, and his red face looked a little embarrassed. I heard. Sister Shinobi said to Sister Kanae. That, you and Sister Shinobi have already done that. Tsuyuri Kanao bit his lip and looked at Su-Mu carefully. After Kanao's words fell, Su-Mu was also taken aback, and she didn't expect Kochu Shinobu and Kochu Kanae to be so careless. Looking at the fiancé with wide-eyed eyes, Tsuyuri Kanao also took a deep breath, and bravely continued. Kanao is Mu-chan's fiancé. Shinobi is not Mu-chan's fiancé. As a fiancé, I haven't. Sister Shinobi has already. The more he spoke, the redder his face became, and the lower his voice became. That red face is also getting redder and redder. I'm really worried that if I keep holding it like this, my little face will bleed. Seeing this scene, Su Mu also smiled wryly. This Kochu Shinobu really gave him a big problem. I'm afraid I have to explain it to Kanao. How can such a thing be said in front of Kanahira? Walking in front of Kanao, looking at Kanao who was tightly clutching his little skirt with his small hands, he also stretched out his hand and took her hand. When he first held hands, Kanao's little hand was still a little stiff, but even though it was stiff, it was still very soft when held in his hand. Su Mu first sat on the edge of the bed, and then held hands slightly harder, and Kanao was pulled by him and held in his arms. The tip of the nose smells the slight fragrance of Suyuri Kanao's hair. It is different from the yellow hair when I first met Kanao. These days, with the nutrition keeping up, the girl's hair has also absorbed sufficient nutrition and become black and beautiful. Kanao. Would you like it too? Kanao's face was a little red, and he lowered his head a little shyly, expecting Ai to say yes. Then, he raised his head again, looking at his fiancée with purple eyes. I was originally Miu Chan's fiancée, and I will be a girl who will be Miu Chan's concubine in the future. This is what Kanao should do in the first place. Things. It's the little wife's responsibility. Listening to Kanao's answer, Su Mu remained silent for a long time. But I still feel that Kanao needs to think about it seriously. Kanao, don't think about it seriously. Kanao's big purple eyes looked at Mujong in confusion. Why should he think about such a thing? Isn't it what he should do? Because, this is a matter of Kanao's life. Su Mu looked serious. Before, Kanao's world was very empty. Even if she has her own emotions now, her world is still too simple. Now, in Su Mu's view, Kanao has not fully grown up yet, and what he says is also the words of a child. As for these things, it involves a lifetime. All he wanted was for Kanao to think about it seriously. A lifetime is too long. No one knows what will happen in the future. Such a lifelong decision cannot be taken lightly. He is willing to give Kanao more time to think and decide. Also, I am willing to respect Kanao's opinions and ideas. What Kanao said is a lifetime thing. Kanao answered very seriously. From the beginning, Kanao is Miu Yang's fiancé, and will be Miu Yang's concubine in the future. Listening to all this, when Su Mu's heart was slightly touched, she couldn't stretch her hand out, and gently scratched Kanao's little nose. I just realized that my Kanao is really stupid. Silly is stupid, as long as you are pampered by Miu Zhong, it doesn't matter how stupid you are. Kanao sucked his nose and said in a low voice. It's getting late, go to bed quickly. He said softly, and then, patted Kanao's little head. You are still young, these things are not considered now. Still young. Kanao frowned in distress. Then when will it be too young? Su Mu leaned on her chin slightly, thought for a while, and then brushed Kanao's soft hair with her palm. When Kanao's hair reaches his waist, he will be considered not too small. Hair must grow to the waist to be considered not small. Kanao pouted in distress. That will take a long time. Pat. The little head was hit hard. Suyuri Kanawa raised her head in a daze, not knowing what mistake she had made, and her fiancé wanted to hit her on the head. Go to sleep and don't think about it. If you don't take a good rest, you will become ugly, and if you become ugly, I don't like it. Su Mu put on a tiger face. Kanao don't want to be ugly. Kanao hurriedly took off his small shoes, got into bed, and revealed a small head. Su Mu leaned down, stretched out a hand, and pulled out the Kochu hairpin from Kanao's hair, and pulled out the sword with the hairpin, and the black hair fell loose. Okay. Go to sleep. Su Mu stared at Kanao and said seriously. Then Miu Zhong will sleep with me too. Kanao got out of the bed with his little hand, grabbed his little hand, and said in a low voice with a blushing face. Fool. It's night now, how can I sleep alone? Don't you know, ghosts don't feel sleepy at night. Hurry up, go to sleep. I'll just watch you from the side, and if I find you open your eyes, I'll knock you and knock my Kanao into a little fool. Su Mu started to put on a tiger face. Although it was just words to coax a child, it was surprisingly effective for Kanao. Seeing the leaves and flowers falling to Kanao who had closed his eyes, Su Mu also lightly extinguished the candle. As the candles were extinguished, the room was suddenly plunged into darkness. Just as Su Mu was about to stand up, she suddenly felt her sleeves being pulled by something. Looking down, it was Kanao's little hands that were tightly clutching her clothes. Don't leave Kanao. It was very quiet, but with a hint of inexplicable emotion. Su Mu smiled wryly, and sat down slowly again. Why isn't Kanao sleeping? I cannot sleep. Kanao said with his eyes closed. Okay. Su Mu touched her nose. Miu Zhong, in your heart, who is the person you care about the most? Suyuri Kanao asked in a low voice. Su Mu smiled wryly. Girls love to ask such questions. However, for him, it is still very easy to answer. After all, Chin Ping loves listening the most. Of course it's my fiancé, Suyuri Kanao. Mu-chan is lying. I can feel that Mu-chan is lying. But even if Mu-chan is lying, Kanao is still very happy. Actually, Kanao is very happy to occupy a little place in Mu Yang's heart. Kanao said in a low voice, since I was young, I was the best. Su Mu couldn't help being silent. If you trust me so much, you're not afraid that I'll sell you out. Su Mu slightly glanced at her mouth. This little girl. Why has her mouth been so sweet recently? It made his heart so soft. Mu Zhong is not willing to sell some Kanao. Kanao pouted. Su Mu scratched Kanao's little white nose with her fingers. Go to sleep quickly. Okay. There was a slight sound between the sniffs. Time passed slowly, and before he knew it, Kanao's breathing gradually began to become steady. Should have fallen asleep, even so bow your head. He looked at the hand that was still clutching his clothes while he was asleep. How dependent is Kanao on himself? When I fell asleep, I still had to touch my clothes. While Wei Wei feels helpless, she also feels pity. As a person, a ghost, he also has his own desires, and Kanao has undoubtedly become more and more lively. How could the previous words not have caused some ripples in his heart? But, in the end, I still endured it. Kanao is still too small. Although he is a beast, he is not as good as a beast. With the first ray of sunlight rising from the east, Suyuri Kanao, who was sleeping comfortably, stretched lazily. Last night, she slept peacefully on her fiancé's bed. The purple eyes opened slightly, looking at the fiancé who was sitting on the edge of the bed squinting, like sleeping. The big purple eyes became bright like stars. Mujong, you have guarded Kanao all night. Thinking like this in my heart, while being happy, I felt distressed at the same time. I carefully got up from the bed, and then lightly put a piece of clothing on Mu Yang's body. The golden eyes opened suddenly, looking at the cautious Kanao. He stretched out his hand and rubbed Kanao's small head. Wake up. Okay. Kanao nodded, then looked at Mu Chan with purple eyes. Are you hungry? He asked softly. Not hungry. Kanao said in a low voice. A discordant voice came from Kanao's belly, which made Kanao's fair little face flushed, making him look very cute. The next day, Kochu Shinobu came to Su Mu early in the morning. Of course, not only did she come here empty-handed, but she also brought breakfast. In order to make this breakfast, she spent a lot of effort. Of course, delivering breakfast to Su Mu is fake. The main purpose is to listen to how the big villain explained it. If the explanation is not good, Miss Ren will give him a good look. However, when she reached the door, she froze. Because, on the opposite side, the little vixen who likes to wear a fox mask, like her, also carries a small basket, and the fragrant smell that occasionally emanates from the small basket is obviously also food. Although I don't want to admit it, just by smelling it, I feel that the food is delicious. This comparison made Kochu Shinobu clench his little hands unconsciously. She was full of confidence when she came, but she found that this nasty little vixen, she's getting a little angry. On the opposite side, Makomo also squinted his eyes, but immediately greeted with a smile. Sister Shinobi is here too. Sister Makomo is here too. Although Kochu Shinobu was angry in his heart, he had a Kochu-like smile on his face. A discerning person can almost see that was obviously a fake smile. At this moment, the two of them stood stiffly at the door, looking at each other. Neither of them would take a step forward easily. At this moment, the two people looked at each other like fighting cocks, and neither gave way. The morning of the day begins with the fight between Makomo and Kochu Shinobu. Both parties are smiling at each other as if they are the most sincere, and are waiting for the other party to be unable to hold on, take the initiative to take action, or give up. But obviously neither of them are easy to mess with. Thus, the stalemate began. The two of them were silently waiting for Su Mu to appear, and depending on each other's attitude, they were choosing their next move. Su Mu opened the door, ready to cook something delicious for Kanao. Push open the door. What I saw was the scene in front of me. Kochu Shinobu and Makomo, these two lovely girls, were staring at each other at this moment. The surrounding environment suddenly became silent at this moment, and a strange atmosphere began to pervade. Early in the morning, Su Mu encountered such a scene, and Su Mu only felt a cold wind blowing in front of her face, making her feel chilly. As Su Mu pushed open the door, the gazes of Makomo and Kochu Shinobu suddenly diverged from each other and fell on Su Mu. Being stared at by two people at once, Su-mu suddenly felt overwhelmed. But fortunately, Su-mu still had a strong in her heart, and after a short period of panic, she immediately maintained her composure. "Good morning, Makomo, Shinobu," he smiled softly. Only, neither Makomo nor Kochu Shinobu was smiling. The two reached out almost at the same time, and both had small baskets in their white hands. It can be seen through the slight heat these small baskets are filled with food. This time, Su-mu faced a very difficult problem. Is to take Kochu Shinobu's food first or take Makomo's food first? No matter which one you choose, it is obviously not a good choice. Especially in the immediate situation, Kochu Shinobu and Makomo have obviously reached a tacit understanding. It can be said that the war between the two girls for him has already begun. The success or failure of this battle is in his own hands. In this case, as long as you choose one, you may not be able to choose the second one in the future. Although this world is a world where polygamy is allowed. For example, Sound Column, Yu Sui Tengen has 3 wives. But things are different now. Both Kochu Shinobu and Makomo may have different personalities, but there is no doubt that both of them belong to the kind of very proud women in their hearts. Have their own pride. They would rather wrong themselves in their hearts than let their opponents laugh at them. This also means that if they choose one, the other will silently choose to give up even if they like themselves. This is definitely not what Su-mu wants to see arrived. All he wants is to have it all. But for girls like Makomo and Kochu Shinobu who are so proud of their hearts, it is obviously extremely difficult for them to accept each other's existence. However, no matter how difficult the road is, for Su-mu, this road full of thorns must be stepped on. Because, he is a very greedy person. To make a move. Following Su-mu's movements, both Makomo and Kochu Shinobu seemed to stop breathing, and their eyes were fixed on Su-mu's hand. At this moment, the two girls began to get nervous. Choose yourself or choose the opposite, little bitch. Although they are unwilling to admit each other, both of them know that the other party is a very good girl. At this moment, it seemed that the hearts of the two were thinking together, and the two unconsciously squinted and looked at each other. For a moment, the eyes of the two met in the air. The scene condensed in the eyes of the two is full of swords and swords. And Su-mu has already opened his hand, and raised his palm slightly. Every tiny movement of the arms seems to be tightly grasping their hearts. But the palms were not close to either of them. Didn't take Kochu Shinobu's lunchbox, didn't pick up Makomo either. The two girls were taken aback for a moment, and then they suddenly realized that they were not the only girls on the scene. There is another one. Suyuri Kanao. It's Kanao, she stayed in Su-mu's room last night. Kanao was sitting quietly by the bed, and was going to quietly wait for her fiancé to bring her breakfast. But immediately then I found my fiancé stopped at the door and didn't move, as if I had encountered something. So, he walked over with small steps, and just in time, Kanao's arrival helped Su-mu a lot. Su-mu's outstretched hand naturally landed on Suyuri Kanao's little head. No matter Kochu Shinobu, or Makomo, knows Suyuri Kanao. Also know the actual situation of Suyuri Kanao. Therefore, from the very beginning, they did not regard Kanao as a threat, and even had great sympathy for Suyuri Kanao's situation. But the current situation, it seems that this threat does not exist in their eyes. It seems that it has become an extremely powerful enemy. The eyes of the two of them narrowed for a moment, and they had more than one enemy. Su-mu rubbed Suyuri Kanao's little head, and said softly, "Isn't Kanao hungry? Now, Sister Shinobi and Sister Makomo have cooked delicious food for Kanao." Although Kanao's inner world is simpler, it doesn't mean that Kanao is stupid. Suyuri Kanao is a very smart girl, especially when it comes to her fiancé, it is even more different. But the situation in front of her was already clear in her mind. However, Kanao also has his own mind. She is determined to be a fiancé alone. How could she let other vixen occupy her den? And how to let the fiancé dote on one person alone and become a real hostess? There is no doubt that the first thing to do is to handle family affairs well. First step to do is the little fox showed his sly smile. Suyuri Kanao walked up to Kochu Shinobu and Makomo generously. "Thank you Shinobu-san and Makomo-san for bringing us food early in the morning, thank you very much." Suyuri Kanao took the small basket full of food that was handed over by two people. After receiving the food, Kanao hugged Mujang's arm with his little hand, leaned his head on Mujang's body affectionately, and smiled sweetly at Makomo and Kochu Shinobu. "Sister Makomo, Sister Shinobu, would you like to share with me and Mujang? How about some sauce?" Looking at Suyuri Kanao's sweet smile, Both Mikomo and Kochu Shinobu felt that they seemed to ignore this little fox. She is the most scheming. He has always shown no threat, but he is the most threatening existence. Ignoring the threat of Kanao, and thus allowing it to grow into an extremely terrifying being, much to their chagrin. Certainly even more angry was Suemu's attitude. The bastard did not choose to endure, did not choose Mikomo. Both Mikomo and Kochu Shinobu were a little angry, and at the same time, they didn't want to see the sly smile on the other side when Kanao took the opportunity to enter after they were both hurt. No, I'll save this breakfast for you and him. Kochu Shinobu glared at Sumyu, but left angrily. Mikomo, too, narrowed his eyes and left. Seeing Kochu Shinobu and Mikomo leaving angrily, Sumyu was relieved inside. If the two have been deadlocked here, the situation is really so bad that they don't know how to deal with it. Now, although they are angry and seem to be difficult to handle, the most important point is that they are separated from each other. Separated from each other, he can break through by himself. Call. He breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, being stared at by Kochu Shinobu and Mikomo, the atmosphere was too stiff. But a little later then I got some headaches. Next, how to coax Mikomo and Kochu Shinobu well. He didn't care much about Mikomo and Kochu Shinobu just leaving angrily. If they didn't leave angrily, then the matter would be serious. When you get angry, it means that neither Kochu Shinobu nor Mikomo are willing to give up this relationship. It looks like Miu-chan is very troubled. Would you like to eat something made by Shinobu-san and Mikomo-san? Maybe it will be better. Suyuri Kanao tilted his head, looked at Miu-chan who was extremely troubled, and asked in a low voice. He lowered his head and looked at the obedient Kanao. Su-Mu stretched out her hand unconsciously, and gently rubbed Kanao's little head. Kanao is still the gentlest. Kanao's purple eyes closed slightly unconsciously, but a small invisible gap was revealed, and that small gap clearly carried the cunning of a fox. Bastard, bastard. Damn bastard, Su-Mu. Back in the room, Kochu Shinobu sat on the bed, still recalling the scene of this morning in his mind. Now, that bastard Su-Mu is probably having an intimate dinner with Suyuri Kanao. Suyuri Kanao, Mikomo. Kochu Shinobu lowered his head and clenched his little hands unconsciously. Sister. You came back so early, didn't you just deliver food to Miu? Kochu Kanae walked into the room and looked at his sister strangely. Wait a while, I didn't wait for my sister's response. Kochu Kanae was taken aback for a moment, only then did he notice that his sister seemed to be in a wrong state at the moment. Sister. What's wrong with you? What happened to you? Stepping forward, Kochu Kanae patted his sister on the shoulder. With the touch of her sister's palm, Kochu Shinobu couldn't help shivering, and her body couldn't help shaking. Kochu Kanae unconsciously held his sister's hand. At this moment, Shinobu's state was obviously not right, and the emotion on the face of the usually lively younger sister was obviously a little stiff. My sister is here, what's the matter? My sister will decide for you. Kanae patted her sister on the back worriedly. Kochu Shinobu bit his lip and grabbed his sister's hand very hard. Kanae frowned unconsciously, and her younger sister grabbed her hand a little harder. Some pain. Of course, these pains are nothing to Kochu Kanae, but at this moment, his sister's expression is obviously not right. For the first time, she saw her sister showing such panic. Just like the dark night that their sisters met back then, there was a harmonious family, a gentle mother, and a serious father, but all happiness was destroyed with the arrival of evil spirits. What happened to my sister? Kochu Shinobu raised his head, looked at his sister, parted his lips slightly, and wanted to say something, but didn't know how to speak for a moment. Kanae looked at her sister tenderly, as gentle as ever. Only such a gentle smile made Kochu Shinobu feel a heart-wrenching pain. Sister, will you leave me? Kochu Shinobu raised his head and looked at his sister, just like Sumyu, whether he would also leave him. Shin. What are you talking about? Why would my sister leave my sister? Kochu Kanae was very puzzled why his sister suddenly asked such a strange question. Kochu Shinobu didn't say anything, just stood up silently. Sister, I am alone. Kochu Shinobu said in a low voice. It suddenly occurred to her that in the future, her elder sister would also marry and have her own family in the future. As she is the same as Sumyu. Although the relationship is close, it does not mean that they will be together forever. Looking at the back of his sister leaving, Kochu Kanae Zung's gentle purple eyes shone fiercely. That Sumyu, what did you do to your sister? Twinkling fierce eyes exposed a word danger. I want to write 10 more, but the plot of Shirafield is really difficult to write. I only wrote 3 chapters in one day. Some readers suggested that polygamy is allowed in this world, but my idea is this, such as Makomo, such as Kocho Shinobu, such a proud girl as Kocho Kanae, I am afraid that other girls are not allowed to share their favorite boys with themselves, right? Therefore, the plot that accepts each other at once, I feel that if it is written, it is a bit too wrong. Besides, girls tearing each other up is the prettiest thing, right? After having dinner with Tsuyuri Kanao, Sumyu left. Between Makomo and Kochu Shinobu, after a slight hesitation, he tossed a coin. The direction of the coin is head, so he decided to go to Kochu Shinobu first. However, when I arrived at the place where Kochu Shinobu lived, I didn't meet Kochu Shinobu, but met Kochu Kanae, the older sister of Shinobu. Seeing that Kanae's once gentle face suddenly turned very cold and fierce, the moment she saw him, Sumyu felt it. However, Sumyu still bit the bullet and asked in a low voice, "What about forbearance? Don't you know what you did yourself?" Kochu Kanae looked at Sumyu fiercely. As an older sister, she had never seen her younger sister so disappointed. He touched his nose embarrassingly. Since I chose to be greedy for these roads from the beginning, these things need to be borne. Kochu Kanae wanted to say something else, but thinking of her lost sister, she finally frowned and said, "She just left. After all, only the man in front of me can untie the knot of forbearance." With Kanae's advice, Sumyu hurried to find Kochu Shinobu. Soon, I saw Shinobu in a remote place. Right now, the Nichiren blades are cutting down trees. It's somewhat against harmony for a girl to chop down a tree. Moreover, the situation of the girl was not right, her teeth were clenched tightly, her eyes were fierce, as if she was venting something. Seeing this scene, Sumyu unconsciously felt a chill on her neck. It seems that the current situation is going to its own disadvantage. Asshole. Asshole, the girl gritted her teeth, and said over and over again. The Nichiren blades in her hand were also chopped down on the tall and thin tree. Soon, with a squeak sound, the tall tree almost halfway down was cut down by the girl abruptly. Looking at the girl who was panting slightly, Sumyu felt a little distressed, and walked up unconsciously. In any case, as a man, you must be brave enough to take responsibility. Even if you are greedy in your heart, you must also bear the responsibility of greed. Walk a few steps in front of Kochu Shinobu, get off Kochu Shinobu's Nichiren blades who are about to cut down trees. Looking at the disappointment hidden in Kochu Shinobu's eyes, the tears dripping silently from the other party's purple eyes. Suddenly, Sumyu realized that the world she was in was not really an illusory existence. The people here are all flesh and blood. And he, deep down in his heart, has been ignoring the existence of this world. To a certain extent, he has always regarded the people in this world as NPCs, so he cares more about himself. Don't hurt yourself. Looking at Kochu Shinobu who was staring at her in a daze at this moment, Sumyu also felt quite complicated. Kochu Shinobu lowered his head, biting his lips with white and tender teeth, and did not speak. The purple eyes drooped slightly, as if they were no longer as agile as they used to be. Sumyu grabbed Kochu Shinobu's little hand all at once, vaguely feeling the coldness of Kochu Shinobu's little hand. Kochu Shinobu struggled slightly, trying to break free from Suemu's shackles, but found that Suemu's hands were like iron clamps, and he couldn't break free. Kochu Shinobu opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but Suemu's broad embrace greeted him. Sumyu directly opened her arms and embraced Kochu Shinobu's petite body in her arms. Feeling the coldness of the girl's body in her arms, Sumyu also blamed herself slightly. Kochu Shinobu struggled slightly, seeing that he couldn't get rid of Suemu's shackles. He beat Sumyu lightly with his small hand a few times, and finally, he seemed powerless to hang his head in Suemu's arms. Seeing Shishin so sad, I will feel bad. Sumyu whispered softly in Kochu Shinobu's ear. The gentle words poured into Kochu Shinobu's heart like a warm current, although he reminded himself over and over again, don't believe this bastard's nonsense. But in my heart, I heard the other person's words in my heart again and again without defense. Open white teeth, biting the bastard's shoulder firmly. Why? Why did you do this to me? Why are you doing this to me? Although he thought so in his heart, Kochu Shinobu just didn't say anything, just biting the bastard's shoulder tightly with his teeth. Unknowingly, streaks of golden blood flowed from Suemu's shoulder. He got hurt. Although, for ghosts, such injuries are not considered injuries at all, because relying on the healing ability of ghosts, such injuries can be recovered in almost an instant. But subconsciously, Kochu Shinobu let go of his teeth. She was still distressed and felt a little guilty. Let go of me, the girl said dully. Feeling that the girl's sad emotions were greatly relieved by the bite, just now, and should also be repaired a lot, Sumyu let go of Kochu Shinobu's embrace. Even so, his hand tightly held Kochu Shinobu's little hand. Kochu Shinobu broke free several times, but still couldn't break free, so he simply let Sumyu hold him. Turning his head away, Kochu Shinobu ignored the big bastard and just walked in one direction. Sumyu didn't speak, just followed silently. The time passed slowly, and the breath was a little dull. Scumbag. It took a long time before Kochu Shinobu gritted his teeth and spit out such a sentence. Backquote, it should be said to be a scumbag. Sumyu corrected a sentence. You still have the face to say it. Kochu Shinobu turned his head and stared at him with a fiendish look. Don't be afraid of Kochu Shinobu's fierce, but be afraid of Kochu Shinobu's not fierce. If it is fierce, it means that Kochu Shinobu's inner depression has already settled a lot. If it is not fierce, then the problem will be serious. Sumyu didn't speak, just looked at Kochu Shinobu quietly with golden eyes. Kochu Shinobu didn't speak anymore, his purple eyes stared at Sumyu like a vicious tiger. Sorry. A slight voice spit out from the corner of Sumyu's mouth. Those three simple words shocked Kochu Shinobu's heart. The ferocious eyes did not become more ferocious, the purple pupils drooped, and a drop of crystal tears drooped down. Kochu Shinobu cried. In order to cover it up, Kochu Shinobu pushed Sumyu away with force with his small hand, and then turned his head away. Sumyu embraced Kochu Shinobu from behind. I promise to endure, and I will always be by your side. Who wants you, a bastard, to accompany you? Who do you think you are? Kochu Shinobu cursed softly. Sumyu didn't speak, but hugged Kochu Shinobu tightly from behind, wrapping her arms tightly around Kochu Shinobu's slender waist. I think I can't do without Shinobu for the rest of my life. Kochu Shinobu couldn't help trembling in his heart. He had already made up his mind not to pay attention to this flirtatious man anymore, but his simple words completely broke down the hard city wall he had already built in his heart. Sensing the change in Kochu Shinobu's mood, Sumyu also sighed slightly in her heart. It seems that she let it go before, and the way she handled it was wrong. As a man, you still have to take the initiative. If you really like it, then be brave. Privately. It's so shameless. Anyway, she will be her own woman in the future, so there is no shame in it. Most it's just a ghost. Kochu Shinobu struggled slightly in Sumyu's arms, and seeing that he couldn't break free, he said sullenly. Why don't you go to Makomo? Hearing Kochu Shinobu say Makomo, Sumyu felt a chill in his heart. In Kochu Shinobu's state, he didn't know what was going on with Makomo. I'm a little worried. It seemed that Sumyu was thinking about something, and a soft hum sound reached his ears heavily. Shin, I'm sorry, Sumyu said in a low voice. I don't believe your apology, Kochu Shinobu said sullenly, but the sullenness in his heart dissipated a lot. Actually, I like Shinobu very much, Sumyu said softly. At this time, sweet words are what she needs most. Although his clumsy language is a bit naive, but for men of this era, it is cross-generational. You also know that I'm a ghost. Although I don't eat people, I am extremely strong in some aspects. I especially like pretty girls. Kochu Shinobu's eyes widened. Is it because of ghosts? Sumyu was taken aback, never expecting such a good explanation, but Kochu Shinobu suddenly gave him such an explanation. You know, he is a ghost now. A ghost is different from people. Even if he does some special actions, he can still be assumed to be a ghost. The natural barrier, I don't know how to make good use of it. It's really, really wrong. It's still too immature. This is not a mistake that an inspirational self who wants to become an old driver should make. With a quick reaction, he nodded immediately. Well, yes, when I see a beautiful girl, I can't help being fascinated, and I will feel an impulse, especially when I first saw Forbearance. I was deeply moved by Shin. I don't believe your nonsense, Kochu Shinobu muttered, but couldn't help but feel a little excited. If it is because of ghosts, then it is not unforgivable. After all, ghosts are different from people. Sumyu, a ghost, can endure the desire not to eat people and drink human blood, which is already very powerful. As a result, some situations that may be caused can also be forgiven. Thinking of this, the sadness in Kochu Shinobu's heart eased a lot. For girls, once they like a boy, no matter what mistakes the boy makes, they will always involuntarily find various reasons to excuse the boy. It's just that some reasons are too far-fetched, Even if they are far-fetched, they cannot be excused. However, when the boy can give a reason, and the reason is tenable enough, then the matter is another matter. Feeling that Kochu Shinobu's emotions seemed to be relieved, Sumyu also secretly said something. Then, continue the sweet talk. Actually, compared to Makomo, forbearance is the best, the gentlest, and the most understanding of my heart. I deliberately took Makomo to compare Kochu Shinobu. This is to emphasize how good Kochu Shinobu really is. If Makomo heard these words, he would definitely not let it go. What is certain is that when the time comes, the situation will definitely be difficult to deal with. Of course, Sumyu will not be so stupid as to let the truth hear. But also because of this, at this moment, Kochu Shinobu's originally gloomy mood was instantly relieved. That's right, that little vixen Makomo, how can he compare with Miss Shinobu? Thinking in this way, there is no need to feel arrogant in my heart, and the corners of my mouth are unconsciously raised slightly, with a beautiful arc. Girls need comparison and praise. Even if it is not very good in a certain aspect, it must be swallowed. For example, at home, if your wife's cooking is not good, you must not blame it at first, but praise it. The more you praise, the happier she will be, the more motivated she will be to cook, and she will work hard. Work hard to prepare meals. But if you put on a cold face at the beginning and say that the food is too unpalatable, it must be a cold war, and even, maybe in the next situation, the position of the chef in the family will be tragically handed over to you. The most important thing to become an old driver is the mouth. Sweet talk, that is never tired of hearing. Don't look at the woman's mouth, don't listen, but, no matter the body or the mind, it's quite honest. Especially at this moment, looking at the unconscious smile on Kochu Shinobu's delicate face is enough to show all this. Seeing Kochu Shinobu's gradually changing attitude, Sumyu also breathed a sigh of relief. Women, just rely on coaxing. A man who can really coax a woman will never lack a woman by his side. Of course, if the hard conditions are not met, there may be exceptions. It's just that the current situation is still short of fire. Although Kochu Shinobu was probably coaxed by his own sweet talk, but obviously, it is not so easy to get the other party to easily forgive him for cuckolding her. In this way, we can only use a unique trick of advance by retreat. At this moment, he let go of Kochu Shinobu's hand, and at the same time, he pushed Kochu Shinobu away gently. He was tightly hugged by Sumyu just now, and his little hand was also tightly grasped, but in the next moment, he let go. This made Kochu Shinobu a little uncomfortable and at the same time a little dazed. Unconsciously looked up at Sumyu. Then I saw Suemu's golden eyes flashing with sadness, and she sighed slightly. Forbearance, the first time I saw you, I was fascinated by you. Humph. Although Kochu Shinobu was happy to hear it in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. This dead ghost doesn't believe in these sweet words. Although he reminded himself that he didn't believe it, he still heard it in his heart. Just when Kochu Shinobu thought that Sumyu would say some lies again to fool himself. But no, I saw Sumyu sigh faintly. Forbearance, maybe, since I met you, it was a mistake of mine. Actually, I shouldn't appear in the life of ninja, and meet ninja. Kochu Shinobu was taken aback for a moment, and his heart tightened all of a sudden. What does Sumyu mean by saying this? Could it be that she is fascinated by that little vixen Makomo, so she wants to separate from herself? The purple eyes stared at Sumyu all of a sudden. Are you going to separate from me? Sumyu shook her head bitterly. I just think that our first encounter was a mistake. After all, you are a human and I am a ghost. Ghosts are not tolerated by people. In this world, there has never been an example of people and ghosts being together. Perhaps. Sumyu looked lonely. I'm still a ghost after all. The slightly lowered golden eyes and the already lonely expression on his face made Kochu Shinobu flustered all of a sudden. Maybe, I did something wrong, I shouldn't be angry. How can I be so selfish? In fact, the most painful thing should be, after all, to become a ghost, not only must endure the drive of ghost nature. All the time, it is already infinite pain, but now, it is heartbroken for such things as yourself. Is it really wrong? Perhaps, we shouldn't have known each other from the beginning. In fact, perhaps, it would be better to separate. Sumyu looked lonely and sighed faintly. That's not it. Kochu Shinobu looked at Suemu's state, thinking that Sumyu was serious about leaving, and panicked all of a sudden. What's wrong with being a ghost? I just like ghosts like you, and I don't mind that, is a ghost. I just like it and I like it. Kochu Shinobu stuttered a bit. It can be seen that Kochu Shinobu is really nervous. Kochu Shinobu, as I really care about this relationship. Su Mu smiled wryly. Forbearance, look. He stretched out his hand and stroked Shinobu's eyes lightly, his fingers were slightly moist. It's tears from crying before. Without me, Shinobu would be happy, right? Instead of crying sadly. Looking at the tears he shed that were wiped away by Su Mu's hands, Kochu Shinobu shook his head. No, that's not the case. That's not the case. When I'm with Mu, I will be very happy. I feel that being with Mu is special and I feel safe, because I know that no matter what I encounter, Jung will always appear to protect me. With Mu, although occasionally being bullied by Mu, in fact, in the heart of forbearance, it is not actually bullying. Actually, Shishin likes being bullied by Mu. If there is no Mu by my side, I will be unhappy. Kochu Shinobu grabbed Su Mu's hand. If there is no Mu, I will be in pain now. Please do not leave me. Kochu Shinobu raised his head and stared at Su Mu with almost crazy eyes. Mu, I want you to stay with me forever. Lifetime. Very firm eyes. Su Mu was slightly taken aback. He wanted to retreat to advance, but he didn't expect to touch Kochu Shinobu's heart all of a sudden. Completely broke the deadlock. At this moment, Kochu Shinobu had already walked in front of him, looking up at him. Those purple eyes are almost fanatical. Although it is shameful for a girl to say that, and boys will look down on her, but Shishin still has to say that. In my heart, I've actually liked Mu for a long time. Although Mu sometimes said some very blushing words, even though I said I didn't like to hear them at the time, in fact, I really liked to hear them. I'm just afraid that you will leave me, because Mu is so good that Jaen might lose Mu. So. Kochu Shinobu's purple eyes were full of ups and downs looking at Su Mu, and his white and soft hands unconsciously grabbed Su Mu's hand. The fingers are very hard, very hard. It's like grasping the important things in life and not willing to discard them. Will Mu be with Shishin for the rest of his life? Look at the state of Kochu Shinobu at the moment. No doubt. His retreat to advance succeeded, and at the same time, there is no doubt that he occupies a large place in Kochu Shinobu's heart. Otherwise, Kochu Shinobu would not have such a big reaction. This made him very happy. At the same time, I also felt a heavy sense of responsibility in my heart. It turned out that, unconsciously, I had occupied such an important position in the heart of forbearance. Looking at the silent Su Mu, Kochu Shinobu felt a little troubled. For Kochu Shinobu, from the very first meeting, because of her aversion to ghosts, she wished to kill the ghost, Mu. But as she got in touch with her slowly, she found that Mu's thinking was different. So, I began to try to understand, and slowly, I went deeper. And unconsciously, I was slowly attracted by Mu, his gentleness, his unique words, his occasional teasing, and his uniqueness. Gradually, I realized that I already had the figure of Mu in my heart. Kochu Shinobu Su Mu, who looked at the state at the moment, naturally knew what to do. He stretched out his hand and hugged Kochu Shinobu tightly, so hard that Kochu Shinobu felt suffocated. He gently cupped Kochu Shinobu's delicate face with both hands. The golden eyes and the purple eyes of ninja faced each other in the air. I like forbearance very, very much, and I hope to be with forbearance for a lifetime. The simple words made Kochu Shinobu's beautiful eyes foggy. This girl, who is the most beautiful girl in the world of Demon Slayer, at this moment, has already turned into a stupid girl who is stunned by love, a stupid girl. He fell into the claws of Su Mu's Demon King without any resistance. It was very easy to be captured by Su Mu's heart. At this moment, this silly woman was completely immersed in the sweet words of the devil, because her heart had already been filled with the boy's promise. Crystal tears dripped from the corners of Kochu Shinobu's eyes. She was really, really happy. Are you kidding me? Kochu Shinobu was sobbing, wiping his little face unconsciously with his small hands, crying in front of Mu, feeling so ashamed. But at this moment, she no longer cared about being ashamed, and now she just wanted to wait for a reply from Su Mu. Naturally, Su Mu leaned over, kissed Kochu Shinobu. After slight contact, they separated and looked at each other. Forbearance will never try to escape from my clutches for the rest of his life. Very domineering words, but it wiped away Ren's sad emotions. There is no definite answer, but the action already represents all hatred. The curtain of the sky fell slightly, and a ray of soft moonlight fell down the window, shining on the two people on the bed. At this moment, Su Mu was slightly leaning against the back of the bed, her gaze slightly pensive. As for Kochu Shinobu, he was leaning against his chest and sleeping soundly, with a fine blush on his fair face. The black hair is also scattered. Calm breathing, looks like a sound sleep. Su Mu got up slowly, looked at the girl lying on the bed, and then looked out of the window. A bright moon rose high. It's already night. For ghosts, night is the most active time. Unknowingly, it has been many days since he came to this world. After beheading 12 Kazuki, Winding E, Ice Ghost, and Doma, he has been inactive for half a month. These days, while he is working hard to deal with Makomo, Kochu Shinobu, Kanao, and even Kochu Kanae, he is also paying attention to the news about the Ghost Dance King Muzan every day. But unfortunately, since Doma's death, not only the news about Kibutsuji Muzan has been completely silent, even the ghosts who were active in the world seem to have gotten some news, and they are not as active as before. As expected of Kibutsuji Muzan, looking at the bright moon in the sky, Su Mu couldn't help sighing. What a headache, this cautious ghost dance Muzan. If you can't find Kibutsuji Muzan, then naturally you can't talk about dealing with Kibutsuji Muzan. Pushing open the door, under the moonlit night, there is a pavilion in front. A girl with a colorful butterfly feather weaving and waist-length black long hair is sitting there quietly. In front of the girl, there are some tea sets. Seeing this, Su Mu hesitated. In the end, he walked over. It's so late. Why don't you go to sleep? He looked at Kochu Kanae and asked curiously. Can't sleep. Kochu Kanae shook his head, his pink eyes raised slightly. Sister, are you okay? It's all right. Su Mu returned somewhat unnaturally. Okay. Kochu Kanae nodded, then pointed to the opposite seat. Su Mu sat down naturally. Kanae started to pick up the tea set and started to make tea. Her movements were skillful and she looked very appreciative. Tea art is a very elegant thing. I didn't expect Kanae to be so proficient in this aspect. Soon, a cup of tea was placed in front of Kochu Kanae. The slightly wafting tea fragrance permeates the air, which smells particularly pleasant. Su Mu picked up the teacup, took a sip, and couldn't help but praise. After drinking a cup, Su Mu handed over the teacup. Kanae raised her hand and took it. Against the backdrop of the soft moonlight, Su Mu's delicate makeup looks even more girlish, which makes Su Mu's heart skip a beat. Su Mu also imitated Kochu Kanae's movements to make tea, but obviously, she was just different and couldn't learn the charm of Kochu Kanae. I do not know how long it has been. When the sun rose and the warm sunlight shone on his face, Kochu Kanae opened his eyes in a daze. Looking at the room that belongs to him, he is slightly confused. Yesterday, I chatted a lot with Su Mu, and finally fell asleep before I knew it. It was the first time I slept so deeply. Ever since her parents were killed by a ghost, she has been living with her younger sister. In the eyes of her younger sister, she has always been a very gentle and strong older sister. Whenever her younger sister has nightmares at night, she always appears in time to comfort her younger sister. However, for Kanae, she has never had a good night's sleep. She also had nightmares, but when she woke up, she could only curl up in the corner of the bed and stay there silently. As a sister, she should have been strong. Get up from the bed. Kochu Kanae, barefoot, walked to the window and pushed it open. The one who opened the window with her was Shinobu next door. Kochu Shinobu called his sister affectionately. Okay. Kochu Kanae nodded, with tenderness in his eyes, and at this moment, both eyes fell on the man wearing a bamboo hat practicing sword in the morning sun. As we all know, ghosts are afraid of the sun. Although Mu is covered with a black hat, ghosts always look sluggish and lethargic during the day. But now Su Mu has already started to practice swords, enduring the pain of the day. All along, they were amazed at the rapid improvement of Mu's strength, but they seemed to ignore that he worked harder than anyone else. Moreover, because of the characteristics of ghosts, the efforts of Mu are beyond the reach of ordinary people. After all, ghosts have infinite physical strength and can practice without interruption. This rascal is really hard-working. Kochu Shinobu muttered in his mouth, but he was flattered in his heart. Hearing Shinobi's voice, Su Mu, who was practicing sword, also put away his sword. Look back. Looking at the separate room, 2 windows, there are 2 similar girls lying on their stomachs, both wearing Kochu hairpins in their black hair. As the wind blows, the Kochu hairpin flaps its wings, as if a real Kochu is flying. If you don't work hard, how can you protect the people you care about? He smiled, and then said with a smile, Shinobu, Kanae, good morning. Well, good morning. Kanae nodded. In the morning, after spending some time with Kochu Shinobu and Kochu Kanae, Su Mu is ready to go to Mount. Kochu Shinobu's eyes were complicated, but after losing his temper before, he seemed to have accepted it and didn't say anything. Holding the sword, Su-mu embarked on the road to Shawu Mountain. Last time, Kochu Shinobu lost his temper, but Makomo didn't say hello, and went straight back to Kiriyama. I don't know if I will report myself to the water pillar, Yorokodaki Sakanji after I go back. After all, I promised the other party to take good care of Makomo on the front foot, and on the back foot. Makomo ran back to Shawushan in anger. Even with Yorokodaki Sakonji's good temper, I'm afraid. Thinking like this, I can't help but stop, come out. He stood where he was, his golden eyes fell on the dense grass not far away. A burst of rustling sound came. Gentleman. Wearing a pink kimono, with long black hair scattered slightly, and a black haori on the outside, a pair of beautiful eyes looked at him timidly. Nezuko. Su-mu said, is there something wrong with you following me? Are you leaving Butterfly House? Okay. Su-mu nodded. Where is that going? Nezuko asked softly. Go to Shawu Mountain. Su-mu didn't hide it. Okay, can you take me with you? Nezuko begged softly. What did Nezuko go to Kyogiriyama? Su-mu is a little strange. Because. The big brother is in Shawushan, Nezuko whispered. Because. Tanjiro? Su-mu murmured. Because of Nezuko's following, Su-mu couldn't use his full speed, so he slowed down as much as possible, and tried his best to keep up with Nezuko. But obviously, Nezuko, who was still very young, still had some difficulty following. After all, with his current strength, even the pillar of the ghost killing team is no longer his opponent. It can be said that the strength is getting closer and closer to Kibutsuji Muzan. Can it work? Su-mu paused slightly, looking at Miduzi who was following up, a little out of breath. Okay. Nezuko pursed his lips and said seriously, the big brother is training hard in Mount Kyogiri in order to protect his family. Nezuko should also work hard. If he can't even keep up with the pace, then Nezuko should be too bad. Su-mu couldn't help smiling when she heard this. Nezuko is indeed a very cute girl. Although the two of them didn't spend much time together, he was very impressed with Nezuko. Of course, it's not just because of watching anime. Even if you don't watch anime. For a cute girl like Nezuko, I'm afraid there is no way not to like it. Su-mu didn't say anything. Since Nezuko is willing to persevere, he won't stop him. At the same time, he is also a little curious about how long such a small Nezuko can persist. With such inquiry, he is not asking anything. Time passed slowly. And as time went by, Nezuko's delicate face was covered with sweat. The ruby-like pupils were already filled with exhaustion. But the girl still gritted her teeth and tried hard to follow his steps. This made Su-mu nod unconsciously. No wonder the girl in front of her, even though she became a ghost in the original future, was able to get rid of her cannibalism and always remember the existence of her family. Hill. In addition to its own particularity, this toughness and persistence are all indispensable. But. Su-mu raised her golden eyes, because it was night now, and ghosts began to haunt. He already felt that a ghost was wandering in the distance hesitantly, and the reason for the hesitation might be because of his existence. After all, with his current strength, he, a ghost, has naturally oppressed other ghosts. Looking back, he looked at Nezuko who was still trying to follow behind him. Let's see what your limit is. With some interest. Thinking of this, he unconsciously quickened his pace. Nezuko was already exhausted. Su-mu suddenly speeded up Su-mu, even though Nezuko tried his best to keep up, but the gap in strength was very fast, and he still lost track. In the silent forest, in the dark night, Nezuko was alone. For a girl, such a scene is undoubtedly frightening. Nezuko is obviously nervous at the moment, and his ruby-like pupils are constantly scanning around. Suddenly ahead, a ferocious monster with 4 limbs crouched in front of him appeared. Ghost for a moment. I couldn't help feeling a little flustered in my heart, and I had the idea of turning around and running. But didn't end up running. Nezuko's small white hands gently pressed on his waist, which was a protective object given to him by his master, Love Pillar, Kanroji Mitsuri. A handful of Nichiren blades, thin blood? The ghost sniffed the air, looked at the girl in front of him, his ferocious eyes were full of excitement. Thin blood is a rare existence among human blood types. After being eaten by ghosts, it can have the effect of eating dozens or even hundreds of people. Thinking of eating the little girl in front of him, it is conceivable that his strength will be improved rapidly. The greed in the heart made the ghost's eyes full of fiery meaning. Call. Breathe. Nezuko kept in mind the breathing that his master Kanroji Mitsuri taught him. The breath of love is a derivative of the breath of flame. Roar. The ghost roared, its limbs were like a crouching beast, and it rushed towards Nezuko. Calm down. Nezuko kept shouting to himself in his heart, trying to restrain his trembling little hands. Breathe, concentrate on breathing. Imagining in my mind what my master Kanroji Mitsuri taught me. Suddenly he pulled out the Ririn knife from his waist. The breath of love one shape. The trembling of first love. Steaming heat rose from the delicate skin of Nezuko's body, and at the same moment, the girl held the Nichiren blades in her hand and swiped across. The blade slashes quickly like a whip, flickering. The evil ghost that was flickering with cold light had already been chopped into pieces by her breath of love. And with the invasion of the solar energy contained in the Nichiren blades, the evil spirit quickly dissipated in a wisp of black smoke. I defeated the evil spirit. Wei Wei has a trace of unconfidence, but soon, her heart is filled with even greater excitement, but she completely forgets that there may be more than one evil spirit. Another evil spirit lurked behind Nezuko at some point, and when Nezuko was completely immersed in the process of beheading the evil spirit just now, this evil spirit had already pounced on him. Nezuko didn't react until the whistling wind reached his ears. Looking at the ferocious ghost, at this moment, there was no room for resistance. At this moment, a hint of despair appeared in Nezuko's eyes. Did I just leave this world like this? Big brother, younger sister, father, mother, will they be very sad when they hear the news that they are no longer? Choke. A fiery red horse slashed across, and the attacking evil spirit was instantly beheaded. Su Emu's figure also appeared again. Nezuko half-kneeled on the ground with some difficulty, and was terrified in his heart. Just now, he almost died. If Mr. hadn't appeared in time, I'm afraid. At any time, don't be too relaxed, and keep a vigilant heart. Su Mu looked at Nezuko, who was half a ghost on the ground, and said vigilantly. It's Nezuko who is too weak, too careless, and Nezuko is really useless. Nezuko looked downcast with his little head down. Su Mu couldn't help but stepped forward, and gently rubbed Nezuko's little head. I'm sorry, sir, but your beans have been missed by the doctor. Nezuko is very smart, and he can probably feel that Su Mu is training him, but he didn't expect that he would be so humiliated. Su Mu shook his head. Nezuko is already very powerful. Really? Nezuko raised his head and looked at Su Mu with ruby eyes. Certainly. Su Mu nodded. Nezuko, you did really well just now. It's just that we still need to work hard. Expressed recognition of Nezuko and encouraged Nezuko at the same time. I will. Nezuko clenched her small fist vigorously. The girl's heart was full of passion at this moment. At the same time, I am also very grateful to Mr. I think Mr. is a very gentle person.